for the starting of the budget. I have a list here of the mayor, then the assessor, auditor, or actually tax collector, treasurer, auditor, and then police. The reason I did police tonight, fire on the 15th, and the 22nd is DPW is before we used to have all three in at once and they'd be there till midnight. So I wanted to spread it apart and make it a little easier for everyone to digest everything. So with that, we can turn it over to the mayor to have him address the budget.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. And thank you, Councillors, for having me tonight. I know we're joined by our finance department heads as well as Mike in my office. I'll give a little bit of an overview as I do every year, and then happy to answer any questions that you have about overall questions and trends. And then if there's specific questions about particular line items or particular pages in the budget. I'm not sure why I have those headphones on. So I know you all have our the budget letter that we submitted and the budget, and I know Tanya sent over, there was one page missing in the DPW that was emailed over to councilors, and so happy to speak to that as well. And you know, as all of you know, these are unprecedented times in the city and all cities really, as we deal with the ongoing pandemic and coronavirus crisis, and much is still uncertain as to the level of state and federal funding that will be coming into Holyoke this following fiscal year. But obviously we still need to put together a budget document. And as I've said to the council in the past, there was some talk from the state about doing a 1 month budget, but they ended up changing their recommendations and we put together an entire FY21 budget that was pretty stable. And so we used assumptions again from the governor's numbers that were released back earlier this year in January. And we did work together with the financial team, utilizing predicted loss of local revenue on our tax recap. Again, utilizing the governor's January numbers as it's the only document numbers available to us right now. And it is our hope that, you know, upcoming state aid and federal aid will only increase our city's financial capacity. But we're also, and we should all also be prepared for more drastic measures as needed, and hopefully we'll have more information in the coming weeks and in the coming months. But as of tonight, we're being told by the state still that they're waiting on action from the federal government, and we are, I think we did send along a couple of different scenarios. There's some foundations that have done projections in terms of the state budget deficit and what that would mean for communities. And then there's also the possibility, obviously, if the HEROES Act that was passed in the House passes, what that would mean for Holyoke as well. And honestly, that would provide, you know, several millions of dollars to our city for FY20 and for FY21. The budget proposal put together, it represents overall majority level funding across departments, with the exception of prior negotiated obligations and union contracts. For the time being, staffing levels will remain level set. There's no layoffs in the general fund side of the budget. Some of you have asked about potential need for layoffs, but after reviewing operational and financial implications, I believe that the layoff should be a last resort pending further information on state and federal aid. And so I decided that let's keep things consistent and stable in the city and not make any drastic decisions unless we're actually in a position where we need to make those decisions. We simply just do not have enough information at the moment to do that, but we have obviously thought long and hard about what that would look like when and if we do have to make those decisions. And the layoffs in the short term are not as financially beneficial as they may seem. The city would still be responsible for a minimum of 50% of the unemployment payments up to a period of 39 weeks. Just overall about how we came to this. This year we had a little bit more of an extensive process. We put together a budget committee that included the city auditor, the tax collector, Mike and my office, met January through March, working with department heads and DLS at the state level, worked with our outside auditors to develop as accurate of a budget as possible, doing sort of 5-year trends in each department. And so the requests that we reviewed totaled $144,665,000. After we reviewed those proposals, took into consideration our revenues and some reductions, I made about $2.33 million in cuts which leaves the budget figure at 142,343,394, and at the moment a deficit to be covered of 928 at the time of this submission. The working with Katie, our tax collector, we estimated a 5% reduction in our collection rate for local property taxes from a 98% collection to 93. This is a conservative estimate since we do not expect the reduction will actually be that severe. And we've been pleasantly surprised, and Katie can correct me if I'm wrong, of the percentage being consistent even in the midst of this pandemic. Also developed projections for the loss of other local taxes such as hotel and meals tax based on loss in revenue tracked during April and May, and projected that out for ongoing local closures, and want to update those projections for sort of a soft reopening and slow reopening, and what that would mean for collection of hotel and meals tax as well. We have not, let's see, deficit spending. I know we provided a specific update on the funds we're receiving from the state for the additional positions in the Board of Health. And so that's at no expense at the city and not included in the budget. I wanted to highlight just a few highlights in the budget here and decisions that we've made. Wally Computers, I think, was a success this year, not only providing savings, but just being more efficient with city departments. Expanded levy capacity and a strong stabilization fund. And so as we discussed several months ago, the current fiscal year we're in, FY20, marked the first year in recent memory that we were able to set a tax rate below our levy limit, largely driven by home sales in the city, with additional new growth coming in from new construction and business openings. And the size of the city stabilization fund remains a strength in the community, particularly in these times, and it stands at just about $13.1 million. We've been trying to adapt under COVID, and so things are still changing, enhancing technical capacity to the city. City website was launched. New permitting software is in the works. We had to work on reducing the municipal waste disposal cost. As you know, we've talked about this extensively, and we internally were able to work out an arrangement that obviously cost us more, but much less than what we were originally anticipating when we were given that mandate at the onset of that process. And as always across the city, even in the midst of this pandemic, there was a ton of construction, particularly happening downtown, public infrastructure projects, park projects, the pool project, that didn't stop, that carried on, and happy to see those projects come to culmination in the coming months. But that's sort of an overall picture of the budget. I mentioned before we're still waiting on state and federal support. There's been little indication as to what the state budget is going to look like, and as all of you know, after doing this process for many years, well, we're required to have a budget on July 1st. That's not necessarily the case for the state and federal government, and so we're sort of in a wait and see mode. The Tufts University did a study projecting anywhere from a 1.8 to a 3 billion loss to the state over the next 15 months, and the Massachusetts Taxpayer Foundation predicted up to an even $6 billion loss. And so we did some analyses that, depending on the shortfalls, what that would actually mean for the city of Holyoke. Obviously would increase our deficit if we get no additional aid from the state or federal government, but there could be a scenario, for example, where the HEROES Act passes, or the Senate and the House come to an agreement on direct aid to cities and states. The Senate President, and I know the House obviously is interested in direct aid to cities and states, but we're yet to see specific updated progress on that, and still await ongoing conversations there. So still a bit in flux, but the document in front of you really doesn't contain anything out of the ordinary, anything significantly new, which is also unfortunate. Obviously, there are always additional investments we'd like to make in our departments, whether it's the DPW or parks or other services to residents, but this budget does maintain city services that all of us, all of our residents rely on each and every year, and is submitted to you with a reasonable deficit that we'll be able to overcome in the coming months. And as all of you know, this process is a fluid one between now and when we set the tax rate later this year. And so things will things will change. We'll get more information, and we'll continue to update the council as we get the information that is relevant and necessary to this process. And so that's just an overall sort of stroke of where the budget is. And I know you all have the document, and happy to answer any specific questions. And as I mentioned before, other folks are here to chime in as well. So.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone for being here tonight. Are there any questions for the mayor at this time? Councillor Mcgarrett.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mayor, for the overview and putting the budget together. I tend to, I think I already said this, but I agree with the state that we need to be a 12-month budget if we're going to go through this 45-day period of line item review. If it wasn't a 12-month budget, it would make no sense. I realize there's a lot of unknowns, and I don't think we can, tonight, get into that too much, because they're going to be unknown for a little bit. And the state has done this, without the COVID crisis to us in the past. But do we have any indication from the state on lottery monies?
As far as I know, no. Mike, were you going to chime in there?
Yeah. So no, I was just going to say that's the same thing. They're still crunching the numbers on their projected revenue losses as well. So when we projected our revenue losses, we included all state aid, and that included projections of lottery revenue loss from the sources that we used. So indirectly, we projected losses from lottery money.
In unemployment, going through it a long time ago, I understand when you say the 50%, we've heard that from Mike, we've heard that from you, Mayor. And what that means is we are self-insured when it comes to unemployment insurance. So if anybody collects unemployment insurance, who's eligible, and they could even be laid off if they worked for the city, went to another job and got laid off from the other job, we still may be responsible for some of their quarters. But when we have an active person that is laid off in the past, we had, our auditor at the time, Brian Smith, had developed a formula that seemed to hold true, where for every person you laid off, you had to lay off another half a person to pay for the unemployment for the two of them. Is that the 50% rule you're using, or have you thought about where the money will come from for unemployment?
Well, I mean, I can answer that. The unemployment just comes out of the budget. You're still liable for it. You can pull it from whatever
Mike,
normally pull it from their salary line.
Mike, I understand that. What I'm just saying is if you don't have enough money to keep somebody on, there's no money to support the salary. You lay them off, you still got to find money to support the unemployment you have to pay for.
Yeah,
that's correct. That's the challenge, and it didn't make. Well, obviously, if we have to make those decisions, we will. We're not in a position where we have to, but it didn't make financial sense to do that now, just given it doesn't make as much financial sense for us in the short term. If we're in a position where when we actually know the numbers, what the shortfall is, if there is a shortfall, and then we'll have to do a calculation of how many employees does this mean? Are we supplementing it with additional layoffs of half positions, or are we finding the source of paying that from another source in the city?
It's pretty steep, just because we are self-insured. It saves us a lot of money over the years, but it becomes very costly when you get into situations like this. Currently, are we paying anybody outside of the school department budget for unemployment?
I believe the only, I would have to defer to personnel. The only position at this point that was notified of a layoff was in an email that all of you received this morning from the employee at Wisteria Hearst. It's paid out of a special revenue account, and so not reflected in the general fund side of the budget in the museum and monuments page. And that layoff, I think, was effective May 27th. It doesn't take effect on July 1st. And so I imagine they would be eligible for unemployment, and I would have to check with personnel on the particulars. But other than school department, there's really no other employee has been notified of a layoff.
Okay, and we've heard nothing from personnel as far as unemployment issues for the rest of this fiscal year. We got very little request, for transfers for the rest of the fiscal year. Are we going to make it through to June 30th without a crisis right now?
That's the plan. Yes.
Because our last meeting is next Tuesday.
Yep, I'm aware.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks,
All set, Mr. President.
Councillor Murphy. You're on mute still.
Okay, hear
There
me
you
now?
go. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for acknowledging the layoff at Wisteria Hearst. I appreciate the integrity on that. And two other things. Are there vacant positions now that we are planning to hire that are in the budget for any departments? And if so, which?
I do not know. I believe the Board of Health is one department in particular where we've advertised for contact tracers, COVID inspectors, and those have been advertised. Those positions will be funded by CARES Act funds that have gone from the federal government down to the state government. They also have a full-time sanitarian position, I believe, that is open, that will be filled, and it is important to fill. And so those are the positions that I am aware of at the moment. There are not many vacancies in city departments at the moment, and so.
And those care things at the Board of Health, that would be covered by the deficit spending thing.
Yep. So it's a dollar for dollar match, and so before we spend any money, we have to be explicit to the state as to how we plan to spend that money and for what purpose and what the position is. And we make those requests directly to DLS. They write back and say approved, and then we advertise for those positions. And so again, at no expense to the city.
Okay, and one last question, and I think you said it and I didn't get it when you first started. So right now, the projected revenues that we have and the budget as it's listed, what is the deficit?
The corrected number, I was using the corrected number is 1.301 million.
That we're short.
Yep, and that should be on the tax recap page.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the mayor? Seeing none, we can go into the budget, or we can go to other departments. What would the council like to do? Would you like to start with the mayor's side of the budget?
Departments is fine.
I would just go through the agenda the way that it was set up.
Well, the agenda next is the.
Well, Mr. President, this is the only shot we have at the mayor for his actual line item budget. Other
Right,
departments.
that's what I was saying. Did you want to go down the list of department heads and then go
Well,
to?
if there's going to
each
be any
paper?
proposed cuts, in any budget, I'd like to hear it in front of the department head.
Right, so we can go to page 2 of the budget. That's the office of the mayor.
So just so I know too, are you all making you all are making the cuts tonight? This is just a review.
No. For anyone who's on here tonight or watching at home, tonight is just going through each page of for where the department is, seeing if there's cuts or not cuts or different changes. It is the 29th that we will be having our meeting in order to do cuts to the budget. And if need be, if we need more time, the 30th as well. But the 29th is the official day that we'll be doing quotes for cuts.
Gotcha.
So page 2, turning to page 2, office of the mayor.
Mr. President?
Councilor Graney.
Yeah, line item 57300. It's a pretty significant increase to $1,200 or $12,000 for dues and subscriptions. I was just wondering if we have additional dues and subscriptions or something like that this fiscal year, coming fiscal year.
Yeah. So the $5,000 number is what the number was after the council made a cut last year. And I think actually in finance committee last night, we were there to try to get that amount refunded. It's our So between the subscription and the dues to the Mass Municipal Association and the dues for the United States Conference of Mayors, that totals the $12,000. And so you'll see in the previous fiscal year, we expended $11,140. That was a fiscal year before this one, FY19, in which the council didn't cut those lines. I will say currently, if we don't pay the MMA fee, we would be the only city out of 351 cities and towns to not be a member of the Mass Municipal Association. And that isn't just an organization for mayors, it's an organization for councilors. They have the annual trade show. They provide really useful information, particularly in the time of this pandemic. They do a lot of advocacy for state, city and town budgets, and we get special like briefings on negotiations happening in the House and Senate. So that's why the $12,000 number is in there. It's not necessarily an increase, it's just going back to what was budgeted in the past.
Thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, and same line. Can you just go? So MMA is what, 7,000?
Yeah, MMA I think is either 7,000 or 7,500.
7,800. 7,800, I believe.
And what are the other dues for subscriptions?
Yep, the other major one is the United States Conference of Mayors.
And how much is that?
It's 4,000.
So basically, those are the only two memberships. Then everything else would be not. There wouldn't be money left over for anything.
Yeah, those are really the only two expenses that we pay out of that, have historically paid out of that for the last, not just the last 9 years, but before my time as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, the only other thing we do is the subscription to the Republican and the Gazette. There's a paper delivered to City Hall, which also is in that could be afforded in that line.
That wouldn't add up though. I'm assuming, because I do a subscription and I'm assuming I pay the same that you do, a Republican and Gazette, and that would take me past 12,000.
One of them's online only.
What's that?
I said one of ours is online only.
Okay. And all right, thank you.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple things I'll make a comment on. If anybody, if anybody wants to make a cut at budget time, they can make a cut at budget time. Whether or not it's brought before a department head, that's not relevant. So, rhetoric to the side tonight. That's not a fair comment. Mayor, the administrative assistant at $40,000 a year. When does that change?
The executive assistant to the mayor.
The administrative assistant to the city council. It's been at $40,000 since he got into the job. But when does that change?
If the I believe the ordinance would have to change, or there has to be a request in the so if you'll see here, let's see what page is this at. So what page is this on?
Page 11, Mr. Mayor.
What page?
11. The
Page
city
11.
council budget.
So go to page 11.
Admin assistant to the city council.
Yeah. So as you will see, I don't put together this budget. What was requested was 40, and I fulfilled the request that was given to me.
Okay. So at no point was a request ever made to increase that. It's been at that rate for a number of years. In fact, I think for my entire time in the city council, which is 8 years, 9. This is my 9th budget.
Yep, I've never seen a request in a budget for anything greater than 40,000 here.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think it's unfortunate. I also think it's unfortunate that the Nilka Ortiz, who's been working in my office, started her first day with Elaine Pluta in January of 2010, is essentially making the same amount of money 11 years later, actually making less with increased costs on health insurance. And so it's not just your assistant, it's the 3 people who work very hard in my office as well. And that's what the salary study would address.
Yeah, are any of those assistants supplemented by CDBG funds, Mayor?
No, they're not.
No, none of the assistants in your office are supplemented by CDBG funds. Is that what you just said?
Nope, never.
So farmers market funds, manager of that's not being supplemented. You're sure about that?
Yep, very sure.
Okay.
You might be referring to when I had the part-time clerical person in my office who was also the market manager for the chamber, but they were not a full-time position in the office. The CBDG money goes to the chamber, and they hire who they see fit.
And Mayor, just as because you gave us this budget in the middle of May, and there's been some events that have been happening, nationwide since then. And I did have the opportunity to speak in an email with Mike, who's very helpful and turned my questions right around. I appreciate what he did. But essentially, it was, now that this budget is starting to take root a little bit. Is there anywhere in particular, because we've heard from a couple of department heads relative to their budget, that they're ready, willing, and able to make cuts? And what the question I proposed to Mike is there something now that you've had a little time to reflect on it, the last 25 days or so? Is there anywhere that you feel that there's somewhere that there might be there might be some way we can save taxpayer dollars, or are you pretty well firm on the entire budget at this point? And I don't mean to put, first of all, Mayor, let me just say, I don't mean to put you on the spot. So if there's something where you want to circle back. No, that's what I'm here for. And I'd be curious, if you're having conversation with department heads and they're offering up cuts, that's good for me to know as well, so that I know next year that we can go. No, they came in unsolicited. Great. Frankly, so. Great. I would hope that councilors would have an opportunity to ask them in front of this body, so that when the vote is taken on the 29th, those can be transparent. And, I would say, I wish we didn't have to make the cuts we do. So obviously we would love to make more investments in certain departments. As I mentioned before, there were some requests from Mike and DPW for additional staff. And we wish we could afford some of those. At this moment, I wouldn't, I have no specific recommendations for further reductions. Sometimes I do. I appreciate the question. And if I do think of, obviously between now and the 29th, there may be things that change where I could either call or email and say, hey, we wouldn't mind if this line item or this budget gets cut by this amount of money after getting more information or talking to this department head. So that's certainly a possibility. I just haven't had I just don't have specific line items or positions or whatnot to give you at this moment. Yeah, in fact, you've done in the past, and I think now we have about we have a couple of weeks until a little more than a couple of weeks, right? Until we make the determination. So yeah. There's ample time and to hear that, and we've heard from directly from department heads when they've been before us in room 11 and pointing out a specific line, and those are always the ones that we can get to first, and it makes our job a lot easier. And so if you do have some, especially in light of some of the things that have been happening, then absolutely. we would certainly want to hear back. Yeah, and not just you, but any counselor between now and the 29th, if you think of questions that you didn't have an opportunity to ask me or department heads, we're here to make sure that all of you have as much information as possible to make the best decision on the 29th. Yeah, I encourage any counselor, because I really did reach out to Mike, and I mean, I know you're busy, and I reached out to Mike, and Mike's busy too, but Mike got right back, answered my questions, pretty well. So there's that. Thank you. Great. Thanks, Councilor.
Councilor Mcgarrett.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry for the second lay-in so quick, but I just want to address rhetoric. When I asked that we have a department head before us and there's an issue with the line item in the budget that could become a proposed cut, I'd just like to hear it in front of the department head, because I want to hear the argument or the defense from the department head on the proposed cut. I didn't say no one cannot make a cut at the last meeting. I would never say that. Proposed cuts may not be known tonight. They could come after we hear the entire budget. But I just think in fairness to department heads, we should try to question in front of them issues that we have that could become a proposed cut. Mayor, I do have to follow up on one of your comments. In the budget, there are at least 2 department heads where you increased their salary above the requested amount. One is on page 30, 34, 35. So it's, I mean, unless there's something I don't know, I believe it is doable unless they're maxed out.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. But again, with the council position, I would like to see a request there. I did feel like our Board of Health director in particular his work over. I mean, since he got the appointment in particular, but obviously over the last several months, going above and beyond nights and weekends in his response to COVID, deserved an increase there.
And for the record, I have no problem with that increase. I think it's more than worthy, not just for what's going on with COVID, but for the work he's done even before COVID. And I also say, you know, by the time we get to our salary study, we're going to have to do another one because it's so outdated. But I support a lot of what was in the salary study because it was fair, it made sense, and it gave both you and the city council options. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Councilor.
Councillor Lisi.
Thank you. I do want to note, since it was just raised, that I have asked our personnel department and legal department to pull all the information together from the salary study to see if we could update it and just, you know, essentially make those numbers appropriate for what's happening here in 2020. However, due to COVID, it just didn't seem like that was a priority at this point in time. But moving forward into the second half of the year, I hope to be able to revisit that again. Secondly, I do want to just also note that the administrative assistant to the city council started in our 2014 budget with $38,000 and was given a raise in our 2019 budget to $40,000. So there was a recent raise given to that position. So just for the record.
Thank you for clarifying that, Councilor Lisi.
Anyone further for the mayor's portion of the budget? Any further questions to the mayor? Seeing none, we can go down to the list. Next would be the assessor's office.
How you doing?
Tony, how are you tonight?
Good.
Thank you for being here. Before we get to your page, just open up to you if you have any comments or anything to offer, and then we'll go into
my page. We had worked with the mayor's office and finance team. We projected about 700,000 in revenue on top of last year's 56 million. So we're going to be close to 56,700,000 for revenue. Expect maybe most likely single families will still rise this year, which will give us a little leeway over that amount. I think by the end of the year, we should be all set on that. We probably have a little bump on the 700,000, so we'll have a little wiggle room there. I'm very concerned about next year's values from commercial, apartments, retail, everything. You know, we lost Kmart this year. Also, we've had some problems with the mall over the past couple of years, and I expect them to be coming back either this year and next year for reductions in value. I've had a couple preliminary talks with Mark Jenkins from the mall. It doesn't look good, but you know, we're going to try and negotiate so that both sides are happy with values for this year and next year going forward. I know next year more of a hit's going to be taken for value-wise for commercial, retail, rental occupancy, because a lot of people are going to be working from home from now on. So we got to look forward to that. For this year, I think we'll ride the storm, but for next year, we're going to have some problems going down the road for commercial stuff. So that's all I think for that. As far as, go ahead if anybody has any questions.
All right, so with that, Councillor Lisi, you're up first. You're still on mute. There you go.
It's a remnant from previously. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. Councillor Tallman?
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Tony. Thanks for coming down and giving us the your input on the values. As many of us know about the mall, I mean, it's just recently opening up and several stores are closed. Is there any indication, I know you say in the future year, fiscal year, is there any indication of the amount that this coming year will get hit with by the mall as far as incoming revenue from them?
Tony, are you still there? You kind of froze up. What, did we lose him?
He's there.
See if he's trying to. Hey, Ryan.
Yes.
Can you check on that, or did it just go dead? Or
I didn't catch that. What do you want me to check on?
Tony's mic seemed to freeze up, or
It happened last night. He's gonna have to get out and come back in.
I just invited him to start a video, so hopefully that.
Yeah, I'm back.
okay, he's back. Thank you.
No problem.
So
Did you get the question, Tony?
My internet. Start my video.
Oh, there you go. Tony,
Yeah,
you get the question?
go ahead.
Okay, about the mall. Thanks for explaining the commercial. I know the hit
Yeah.
we're going to be taking, but this coming year, and I know last year we negotiated with the mall as far as their values. Are we going to get a big hit this year, tax-wise, from the mall in this coming fiscal year?
They're already questioning this year's values, so we'll have to sit down with a couple other people and Department of Revenue and figure out something going forward. So, I mean, I asked them flat out about JCPenney. They
Right.
said as of right now, JCPenney is still going to remain there, but that remains to be seen because they still have negotiations going on after all this is over. I mean, there might be other stores that will not be able to come back up there. So that decreases their revenue stream for, for income up there. So, I mean, most of their stuff is based on income. It was for last year when we presented, a $7 million decrease. So, I mean, we all know what's coming down the road. So it's nothing new right here. So we're just going to have to work with them.
Yeah, to offset this, and I know last year you talked about some new monies coming in. Isn't there some things that are coming in with the tips that we had?
Yeah, we had a couple tips that are coming back on. I mean, I know Gateway was fully in. Steam Building is back. They did a lot of work on Ray Street. We got East Hampton Savings Bank, which is fully back now. We've had a lot of new construction on houses, either, decks, garages, additions. So, and our single homes are stable, and we'll probably do another 3 or 4% increase on the single family home. So that generates a lot of income for us right now.
Right now, okay. Yeah, I appreciate the work you're doing, and I'm sure we'll all be keeping in touch in the coming weeks to find out where we're at, so we can work with the city budget.
I'll keep you all informed what happens with all that stuff.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so I got a list of people. I had Councillor Murphy, Councillor Bartley, Councillor McGivern, Councillor Lisi, and I think that's it for now. So Councillor Murphy, you're up next.
Okay. And I'm still live, right?
You are, you're here.
Okay. Tony, just the floating clerk, 51106. How much of the time does that clerk work with you, and who else do they work with?
The floating clerk has been with us since she started, so it's almost like a full-time position.
So it's a full-time position in your office?
Yes, it was part-time to begin with, and went to full. That person, when it went to full, left, and then we hired Heidi Morin, who is in there right now. Very good worker. I mean, I have problems. Yeah.
So because you had spent about 63% through the middle of April. That's because somebody left and then you hired somebody to replace them?
63%.
Yeah, you had spent, as of April 16th, you had spent 25,906 in that line item. So. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't have paperwork. I've had, everybody who's worked for me has been there for 3 years full.
Okay.
So,
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So for some reason, maybe they just didn't have a pay cut off there. Okay. And then the other thing is, and this is, I know you had an 3-year assessment this past year, right?
Yeah, it was the 5 year.
5
Well,
years,
actually it was a 4-year. Yeah.
Okay.
Now we're on a 5-year cycle.
Okay. So on the assessment update 53090, I know you're requesting only 14,000, but in FY19
Right.
you spent almost 17.5, and obviously this year you spent over 26,000. So is 14,000 going to be enough?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a reval year, so we can get by. Out of that assessment update, 13 of that is for our software for Patriot. That's one line item really. And then the rest is, for little odd jobs and stuff. So we went down $25,000 in expenses. So.
Okay, but you're comfortable with the 14 then?
Yeah, I'm fine. We'll get through that year.
Okay, thank you.
Next is Councillor Bartley.
Thank you. Tony, thanks for being here. Thanks for being at work on a regular basis, during the whole epidemic. I think I have just some pretty basic questions. Tony, your budget looks pretty tight. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, very tight. I mean, it hasn't changed much over the life that I've been here. So. Okay. Can I ask you a question about new growth? Mm-hmm. I see adjusted on the recap. I see adjusted new growth for FY20. But when do we get, at this point, when do we understand what the new growth is for the actual for the year? I just want to get an explanation, and then how do we project for FY21? Well, right now we projected 700. Like I said, I think we're going to go over that. I think we'll have a little more wiggle room than that, maybe close to $1 million. So that'll give us an extra 300 on top. So if the budget was short 900,000, then you got 600,000 now. So depending on what you guys want to do with that money. So. And you're seeing the new growth. You're seeing a new growth where? Families. But the new growth doesn't count. It's just added on from last year's collection. We can collect up to 2.5%, and then you add your new growth. So we are allowed to collect up to 2.5% of our total value. What we're doing is adding 700,000 onto last year, which still doesn't bring us to the total value of collecting 0.5%. If we were at 2.5% of new growth, we would be collecting, close to $2 million. So we're not close to that. So you can only collect 2.5% of your total value. So what I'm saying is it's not really new growth. It's 700,000 added on for revenue from the previous year. All right, we've seen because the work this body did in wards 1 and 2 with the marijuana industry, certainly some pretty derelict buildings have been taken over. Are we starting to see any benefit from that? Yeah, I mean, industrial stuff. We have GTI, which went very, very well down on 28 Appleton Street. We can use the sale this year for the old Conklin Furniture building. That was a $3 million sale. That building's going to go up a lot. And other industrial sales have helped us also with values. So our industrial base will go up this year, and we're not sure how much, but I would think maybe between 3 and 5% for sure on the industrial base. But it doesn't give us the biggest hit. The biggest hit right now is single family homes. When we have good values for single family homes, we have so many of them that across the board, it's going to give us more value wise for added revenue. All
right, that's very helpful. Thank you, Tony.
All right.
We're now, so it'd be Councillor Mcgarrett.
Thank you. Thanks, Tony. Most of my questions have been asked, as always. You're right on top of it. I just need to ask your salary and Debbie's salary as assessors. Are you both at max?
Debbie's at max. Unfortunately, I'm not. I'm the third longest tenure here, and I'm still not at max. So.
Okay, and you did put a request in for both of you, and the mayor did not honor your request?
That's correct.
Okay, but he could have.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. I mean, he never gave me an answer, so I'm not sure why, but I didn't get an answer from either of them.
The other two people in your department are collective bargaining?
That's correct. So I know the collective bargaining, I'll give you a couple of things. Collective bargaining got an extra week and they got more longevity. There's also a supervisors union or department head union. Now they get a week of sick buyback also, or 7 days of sick.
So that hasn't been solidified yet. We still have to vote on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not included in that. Neither is Debbie. So, I mean, been, weeks off vacation. There's been other things through unions. There's been other stuff through supervisors unions. And even on, I remember the study for the, I wasn't involved in the first phase of the raises, even on the department or the salary study. I'm not sure, but I know I just want my, so.
And how many years have you been with the city? You froze up again, Tony.
Yeah, it froze up again.
It's raining, so.
Can you put up your
I think
hand
I'm
to
still
tell us
here,
your
so. Yeah. I can hear you.
30?
Joe, you want to ask the question again?
I can get the answer from, are you with us?
Yes.
How many years?
I can hear you, Joe.
How many years have you
28.
28, thank you. I'm all set, Mr. President.
All right, so Councillor Lisi.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a couple of questions about revenue and values. So when you do the assessment of values to understand the revenue side of our budget, what numbers are we using for values? Is it like, so if we're going into fiscal year 21, what year of like value
so
do you use?
So you're 1/1/19.
Say that again.
Your everything had to be there by January 1st, 2019.
Okay, 1/1/19, I got it. So the values that we project for 21 are in the year January 1st, 19 to December 31st, 19.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, and the values, as far as I understand, they're based on market values in that calendar year, as opposed to like the income that they generate. I'm just interested with this mall situation because we've already granted them an abatement, and as far as I understand, well, number one, we're creating values based on the market years prior, technically like a full 2 years prior, not the present situation. So
that's correct.
So I have a hard time with the mall asking for any further sort of, generosity from the city, because number one, they got an abatement, that abatement should be based on either 2 years ago or even further, because that would be the year that they're technically looking to abate. And so anything that's happening into the economy now should not be taken into account when we think about what their value is. Certainly not the income that they generate. Like that to me is just, you know, crazy. Like the value is the market value in terms of the potential productivity that you can generate off of a property, not the business that's taking place within the property itself. Like that, we don't charge, I don't know, if we had like a Rolex store on one parcel, same size, next door to Holyoke Hummus, they're not being assessed different property rates. Yeah, tax rates based on the product that they're selling. It's the type of property that they own, the commercial property. So I'm really, again, I mean, I was not shy about this when they received their abatement the first time around. I'm not thrilled about that. I do hope that when they receive the abatement, I think it decreased their contribution to the city budget about $3 million decrease effectively?
No, it was 7 million, so 7 times 4 was close to 4 million, 47, 280,000 for 7 million.
280,000.
Yes.
Okay, so $280,000 reduction.
It's like 40. It's 40,000 for every million. So it's about 40,000 for every million.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they I feel like we've been very, very generous with the mall to begin with.
Oh yeah.
And for them to come back and look for further abatements based on, you know, the income that they are or are not generating, like that's not our business at the end of the day. Like that has nothing to do with us. That's their business that they need to take care of. That is not the city's responsibility to take care of. So I will be watching this. This is something that concerns me.
No, it's fine. And you know what? You should be concerned. It is our major property taxpayer. It's a number one. So, I mean, there's certain things that we have to also listen to when they ask us, you know. I mean, there's income that they do have. I mean, they've showed declines in income for stores over the past, 5-6 years. I mean, they're just starting to come. I mean, a lot of people are not going to malls anymore. You know that e-commerce is king right now. So,
right, and I would say to that point, I have thought proactively about proposing zoning changes to support the mall and really the entire, what I think of as the retail district of the city at this point in time, large scale retail anyway. So I have proposed zoning and ordinance changes that I think would support the mall's flexibility. But just because like one store or a handful of stores aren't generating the income that the mall needs to generate a profit doesn't mean that the city of Holyoke needs to suffer. I mean, that's their business model, and that's what they need to figure out, how they're going to be flexible and how they're going to stabilize their, I don't know, profits or income. That's not, I feel like that really just has nothing to do with the city, because that's just not how we assess value at the end of the day. It's not part of the formula. And so I really hope that we take that.
Well, their income.
Say that again. I'm sorry, Tony.
Yeah, their income has a direct correlation on their value. So each year their income is going to have a direct correlation on their value. So,
but why?
Because that's the way the value is for them. We take all their income, all their rents, take out their expenses, do a cap rate, and that's what their value is going to be. I do have some paperwork already. We're going to have to sit down with them again this year. So it's one of them things. We're going to have to do this every year.
Is that a courtesy or an extension that we offer them, or is that part of the formula?
It's part of the formula. It's part of the formula. Unfortunately, is part of the formula. So when you have declining revenues for business, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt our tax rate overall. So.
Sure. And then I would say if that is a portion of the formula, whatever is happening now in terms of declining rates is still not part of this year's assessment.
No, I know, but they've been declining for the past 5 years, Rebecca. It's not just this year because of the COVID. So, I mean, there's things that, you know, they've lost stores, they've reinvented themselves, trying to do other things, you know, with more like a movie theater, trying to do a movie theater, trying to do this, they're trying to reinvent themselves just to get revenue in there for revenues. I mean,
sure. I don't want to take up any
there
more.
There's no answer right now for them. They're trying to do everything. Yeah, we can talk again about it, you know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're breaking up a little bit, and I don't want to spend the rest of the council's time on this question, but I would love for you to send me just something that outlines the formula that you would use to assess their value.
Yeah.
So all the different pieces that would go into it.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you could hear me, but I'll follow up with an email if I need to.
All right, so Councillor Bartley and Councillor McGivern, the hands are still up. I'm not sure if those are just left over or if you had a follow-up question.
Mr. President, I'd like to speak to.
Councillor Graney first then.
Yeah, just a quick question. Tony, how's the Amazon property up there going to affect our rates up there? Is that going to be a good benefit for the city?
Yes, that's another good building. That was an industrial building that thank you for reminding me too. That's another industrial building that'll be boosted up this year. So like I said, our industrial base will go up significantly due to the marijuana and Amazon and a couple other buildings. So that's thank you for reminding me.
Well, thank you for the answer.
Yeah.
Any more questions for the assessor's office, which once again is on page 5? No questions. All right, thank you, Tony, very much. Next is the tax collector. And with that, make sure the mic is open. How are you tonight?
Super.
All right, so that's page 7. So we'll turn it over to you if any opening comments or any changes or issues or anything you want to let us know, and we'll go from there.
Sure. My budget is pretty standard. I cut as much as I could. I do want to note I'd like to thank Councillor Lisi and Councillor Vacon for last year suggesting that I look into the advertising expenses. I did that this year, and Polio Sun was much cheaper, so there was a large cost savings in that line. So I was able to reduce that for this fiscal year, the next fiscal year as well. Councillor Murphy, I know that you're waiting on the June 1 comparison revenues. I should have that done tomorrow for you and get that to Ryan for him to distribute. But I will say that, I did at least get to the real estate revenue, and by June 1st for all of fiscal 19, 97% was our collection rate. And then through June 1st of this year, we're at 95%. So pretty standard. So I'm happy with that. Obviously, the collection rate is based off of the total value that we bill for. So, obviously that can decrease with fiscal 21, depending on what we're able to actually bill. But at least for this fiscal year, we haven't seen too much of the impact of COVID. I would expect that, the first 2 quarters for fiscal 21 is where we'll see some of that. Other than that, that's all I got.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Katie? No questions for this department? Nothing on their page? Councillor Bartley, I see your hand up. You're on mute still. There you go.
No, roger that. Thank you. Just Katie, hello, how are you?
Good.
Okay, Katie, just so I'm clear, your raise, it's not contractually obligated, true? It was just, I mean, you requested something at 67,000 and the mayor just raised it to 68,340?
Correct. I believe that's the super max for that department head classification. That I'm at.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, I'm not going to put you on the spot here, but your request was 67 and the mayor just raised it to 68,340. So you did not request that, right?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to, sometimes I have to say things 2 or 3 times, and I just want to just make it clear. So there's no contractual, there's no union relation, no supervisor deal, nothing like
Correct.
that. You just made a straightforward request to have a flat budget, and the mayor just went ahead and changed it to 68,340.
Correct.
Okay, so the 3 things, and then just a compliment, if I may. I have to say, Mr. President, that I work with her office pretty regularly. I just have to say, the staff couldn't be more on point, more gracious, more professional, and they are the staff in the collector taxes office is a true credit to the city of Holyoke, and I know Holyoke employees maybe don't hear that enough, and I doubt that those employees, Yaritza or Debbie, are even listening or even play this tape, but I want their supervisor to know that the amount of times I work with them, it's not daily, but it's certainly weekly, and they're just always courteous and kind and very efficient, and so they're a real credit to the city of Holyoke, and so thank you to Yaritza and to Debbie, and of course Katie's Katie's been doing a great job too, and she's a city council appointee, and we're very proud, and I've been very proud to vote for every time that she's been before us, and I hope to get the chance to vote for her again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Tallman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Katie, for the work you've done in the department. A quick question. I noticed the revenues are coming in are very, seems like they're pretty well compared to what's going on. Right before everything hit in March, a lot of the excise taxes of the vehicles were due. Are some of those starting to come in now?
Yeah. So luckily, the first commitment for 2020 kind of got out, and the due date was right when we closed City Hall. Right. So the majority of that commitment came in. It's just been a little bit slower with motor vehicle excise because we had to hold off for the next couple of commitments because we can't force people to pay things, and we couldn't add interest or anything. So we waited, and the second and third commitment just went out June 1st.
Okay, and those will be due in about
July.
Okay. So with the people that got hit with that not coming to City Hall, they didn't get charged any fees or late fees or anything?
Correct.
And they got a certain amount of time to pay it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
For those bills, as long as it's paid by June 29th, there's no fees, late fees, or interest.
Right. Now, is there any, I mean, I know some of the ones that were sent out at people at a certain date to get ready. Is there been any problems as far as lining up or people down there making their payments at City Hall?
No, well, we're still not open to the public, so there's really no line. But our drop boxes have been utilized a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been good.
Is there a way that people do it online too, also?
Oh, we have multiple online options, as well as mailing into the lockbox, as well as even if they want to come in person, they can just leave it in the drop box, and we pick that up daily.
Okay, thank you. And I agree with Councillor Bartley. Tremendous workers in there. I only get there a couple of times, mainly the when I go file an order, I stop in and say hello to the workers, and you got really, really efficient and really personable people working for you, and I really appreciate the work you do for the department.
Thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, and I'll start off by thanking you as well for getting that report as quickly as you did. And it was interesting to see that we were doing pretty well in terms of our revenue stream, in terms of tax collections and excise taxes. And that kind of eased my anxiety a little bit. And I do appreciate how quickly you got it. A couple of questions for you. There's a line item here for parking tickets.
Yep.
Can you explain that to me?
Sure. So for years, my office, we collect any payment on parking tickets. So we had the line item to pay to print the tickets that the police and DPW use to actually write them out. But last year, DPW switched over to an electronic version. So there's been a big cost savings as far as having to print tickets. Now I only have to print tickets for the police department.
Okay, so you're not getting a parking ticket.
No.
Just checking. And then the other thing, tax title certification. And I mean, 2 years ago was almost 14,000, and I know you budgeted 8,000. I haven't seen. I know Tanya sent a report today, but I didn't get a chance to look at it. But when I looked in April, there was no expenditure in that as of yet. So, the 8,000, is that a standard fee that you have to pay, or is it by each certification?
Yep. So that line covers the recording fees when I send the new tax takings to the Registry of Deeds. And that amount actually increased this year. So, but the 13,575 from 2 years ago was the year that in 2018 we didn't get the third quarter bills out. They went out with the fourth quarter. So my tax takings were delayed a little bit. So that the takings for 2018 actually I didn't have to pay that bill until fiscal 20 or fiscal 19, whichever it was. Yeah. So there was like 2 years worth of those in 1 year. That's why that was so high that year.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for your work.
Sure.
Councillor Lisi.
Thank you. Katie, thanks so much for being here tonight and for the work that you're doing. Notice through your website that you do have quite a number of opportunities for people to pay real estate, personal property, excise tax bills online that are current, and then anything that's outstanding in terms of excise and parking tickets can be paid for through Kelly Ryan.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask you how many of those services were available pre-COVID? Like were you able to transition pretty easily given that City Hall was closed, or?
Yeah, they were all already available. People just are using it more now because we've had the push. You can't come in person, so you got to pay somebody.
Yeah, and then are there other services that you're providing or just managing through your department that aren't currently online, or are there a handful of things that could be moved online that just aren't there yet, or?
The only other thing that we really collect money for is MLCs, but there's no real easy way to get that online. I'm sure that my online service company could work that out.
Is that the Kelly Ryan?
City Hall Systems
okay.
would probably do that, yeah.
And MLC, sorry.
Sorry, municipal lien certificates.
The lien certificates. And those also can be moved into payment plans, or?
So a municipal lien certificate is typically a lawyer will or an attorney will request it from our office if they're doing a closing, so that you make sure that there's nothing outstanding with the city on that property. So it's a one-time charge for depending on the parcel.
Sure, but there's probably it's a frequent enough transaction where if you wanted to move it online, it would benefit the community.
Yeah, and it would be a little complicated. We'd have to create like a form so that they could actually put in a full request. But I mean, they've done that in like the clerk's office and stuff, so it's certainly doable.
Okay, Cool. I would love to know next year, like where you wind up with that. I'm not pushing for it, or it's up to you. I'm just curious. And then finally, if people do enter into payment plans, is that automated in any way? Or is that just part of the bill that you send out and then people can make payments on that bill, or are there other automations that could be set up for those payment plans?
So typically, if people are in a payment plan, they have to have a written agreement with me, and we come up with that, and I note it in the system. There's no way to like automatically bill them just for that payment plan, but they can certainly enter any amount that they want to. As far as real estate, you don't have to pay the full bill at all online. You can pay any amount that you choose, and they know they have the bill information to choose the right year and where we want to apply it. But other than the written agreement with me that outlines their payment plan, that's all that we really have for that.
And then, so if they were making payments online, and they were entering an amount smaller than what was due, I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, is there amount due what you're billing them in the payment plan, or is there a way that the online payments account for payment plans, and that they are staying current in whatever arrangement has been made? That's the real crux of the question that I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't think there's really in the online system a way to kind of track that. It's more something that I track internally, because those payment plans come in all sorts of ways, not always just online.
Okay. All right, I'm all set then. Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
Councillor Leahy.
Mr. President? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I all set to go, Todd?
You're all set, Jimmy. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Hey, Katie. All my questions have been answered. As always, you've done a very good job. I just wanted to say two things. One is I just want to say I'm so sorry about your dad. The second thing is I just want to say that all the information that I've ever heard anything about your work has been top-notch, completely stellar. So my hat is off to you. Keep up doing the great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councillor Graney.
Yeah, Katie, just a question. Once again, condolences for your dad too. But I see in Holyoke, I'm not sure if we get anything from excise tax on vehicles, but I noticed that the Amazon people up there must have 100 vehicles operating out of that factory warehouse up there. I was just wondering if we get a piece of that.
Not really, because the garaging address that they're using is not in Holyoke.
Why not?
It's just because it's a national company. They don't have to register it in each location that they are. So they're paying it somewhere. It's just not in Holyoke, and we have no control over that. That all goes through the registry.
Wow, gee, that's a shame, because that would be substantial. Anyways, thank you.
Okay, Councillor McGivern, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just on Councilor Graney's point, it's Katie. I think it's the same thing for Bay State with their laboratory up by the mall. They have all their courier cars up there, but we don't get a piece of them either, because they don't list us as the address, because Holyoke's car insurance rates are too high, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, but that Amazon,
Mr. President.
That Amazon factory, they must have 100 cars, 150 cars. Plus that tractor trailer school that's up there. I don't know what the deal they have with the mall or with Holyoke. I don't know. Just curious.
Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say thanks for paying careful attention to your budget and keeping the collections up really well in your office, as well as running a professional office that's a credit to the city. And I did want to mention that I was sorry to learn about your dad. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the collector's office? No. Seeing no hands up. Katie, thank you very much for being here and for everything that you do. If there's any follow-up, please email her or call her. And if there is any new news, I'm sure she'll get back to us, as she always does. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the list is the treasurer.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Sandy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Business as usual. I'm ready to get into the Q&A. So let's review my budget.
All right, so we're on page 6 of the budget. We'll turn it over to you just to get an update or anything you want to alert us to, and then we'll go from there.
No, we've been keeping the office open during this epidemic.
Okay, well, thank you.
Epidemic, and you know, making sure payroll is being done in timely fashion along with APs.
Well, we thank you very much for everything that you're doing. I see that Councillor Leahy and Councillor Bacon, are you in the queue, or is that from last time?
Yeah, thank you, Todd.
Go ahead, Councillor Leahy. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Leahy.
I'm sorry. So I just want to say another compliment too. Just recently, I had a constituent that needed some help, and Treasurer Sandy not only helped, but she did it extremely quickly, and it was very fast moving. And the constituent and their family were very happy, and I was very happy. So I just wanted to give you know, some props to Sandy. So thank you. I appreciate that. And just wanted to ask you, with this COVID, how is this, besides not going in, people coming in and leaving your office, that sort of thing, but how is it affecting the receipts coming in?
The receipts are coming in pretty good.
Okay.
We have departmentals almost every day. City clerk is turning in theirs. Codes, they have a lot of checks coming in. Police department, and then of course I'm getting all the EFTs online from the Commonwealth of Mass. So the revenue is coming in steady. Haven't seen a lull in the revenue right now.
Okay, so just business as usual?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, all right, that's it for me. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Todd.
All right, Councillor Sullivan.
Yep. Thank you. Hi, Sandy.
Good evening, sir.
Sir, wow, thank you. I just got one question on the land court expenses.
Yep.
Looks like to date, you know, as of a week ago, we'd only spent 27,000. Are you? And the year before, we only spent 38,000. Would we be safe knocking that down a notch?
Yeah, you probably could. The reason why we haven't spent that much is because the Registry of Deeds has been closed, and we haven't been able to send in our redemption certificates. Also, keep in mind that, as Katie said, the redemption certificate went from 75 to 105, so there's a $30 increase. 90% of the time we do get the money back because she puts it on the liens when she turns them over to me. The only time we don't get the money back is when we foreclose on a piece of property. That is the cost of filing the foreclosure and also the other expenses.
Okay, well, if we put it back in line with 2019, would you be comfortable with a $15,000 reduction there, knocking it down to 40 grand?
Sure, I'll be generous tonight and give you 40.
Awesome, then I'm all done. I'm all set. I'm done with you.
Councillor Tallman.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Sandy.
Good evening, Mr. Tallman.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for your help the other day with the conversation we had. I had one question on the budget on banking services. You asked for 50,000, and the mayor awarded 42. Is that going to be enough to get you through?
Okay, give me the revenue code. Oh, banking services. That might be cutting it close, but I will work with it, and if I need more funds, I'll come before you guys.
Okay, and did you use most of that? It shows that you used 2019 47,000?
Yeah, pretty much, because we've been doing a lot of, again, as the tax collector and myself, we do a lot of online banking, and we pay for services that we have for the water, the sewer, collecting the money from the sewer online, and so that costs.
Right, right. Okay, that's the only question I had. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Lisi.
Thanks so much, Sandy. I'm looking at your budget and I'm not so concerned about anything there. But I think we do talk with you about debt and principal debt and interest, right?
We usually talk with the auditor and myself. Yep.
And do we have, I'm sorry, I'm just going to do a little peek here. Do we have Tanya around?
Yeah,
or?
Tanya's here. Tanya's on.
All right. So I just was wondering, it looks pretty much like we're doing the same thing as previous years, but are we entering into any sort of like refinancing or bundling of debt in any way that could creatively cut down on some of the interest payments that we might have to make over time?
Unfortunately, we refinanced, I believe, either in 2017 or 2018, and we are eligible in, I believe, in 2021 to refinance.
Okay. And then are there any other sort of like financial tools that we could be looking at to bundle some of our you know, long-term debt or short-term debt so that they're consolidated in a way and cut down on interest in those ways? Or have we explored any of that?
Well, the other thing would be when 2021 comes around, to review all our debts and see what we can consolidate then.
And it's so it's only with the refinance that we would then
Correct.
Consolidate. Okay, so 2021 will be an interesting year for us. So it's just in the next year. Okay, thanks so much for that.
You're welcome.
Councillor Bartley.
Hi, Sandy. Hello. I have a question about foreclosures. The decision to foreclose, is that kind of a group decision with the problem property group, and is that group still be able to meet, or are you kind of on hiatus?
Well, they do meet. Sometimes they do a conference call. They have kind of postponed it a little bit. You're right. We are in a little bit of a hiatus. But when they do meet and they decide that that the property needs to come back to the city because they have other options to get it back on the tax rolls, they will notify myself, and I will reach out to Sidell and Sidell, and we will follow the proper paperwork. In some situations, Crystal Barnes has been doing some of them. I don't know. I believe there's somebody else in her office that works on that and goes to the courthouse and files foreclosing papers also. So we're working as a team to either RFP some of the properties, receivership, to get them back on the tax rolls.
Yeah, it's a really important aspect of your job, which has many important aspects. And we're really encouraged when we hear the semi-annual reports from the receivership program. And I know we're due for another report in the fall, and we'll have we'll file the appropriate orders and have Crystal come in. But I'd like to have you come in too, Sandy, if you would consider it.
Sure. Because
to get your perspective, I think is really important. I'm so grateful you're working with Mike Sidell in his office. They just really seem to, I barely know him, but he just seems like just a very accomplished attorney from what I hear and understand. And we're encouraged about that. But just one of the things I just would like to do is forecast foreclosures and forecast and I'm not asking to do it, I'm just talking out loud here, that the problem property group would consider that, so that we could, as city council, get an understanding about properties that could maybe come back online. Because I think we all heard what the assessor said earlier, which frankly, I hadn't heard anything like that in my 8.5 years on the board, which is to say the new growth is really from single family homes, isn't it? And
yeah,
yeah, I was, man, that was, to me, that's a headline. And,
right.
And that makes, actually gives me a lot more hope than I may have had prior to this meeting. And, but with that, it just adds some emphasis to the need to get properties back online and to if we need to drop the hammer.
Right.
Nobody wants to foreclose, but I mean, I just think that's led to part of Holyoke. That's been partially the reason for some of Holyoke's problems is letting properties linger for a while. So I don't want to quantify it, but that's just to me really important. So Sandy, if you would consider being part of that for the future, I'd appreciate
well,
it.
I'm also going to give props to Alicia CDBG because she's been doing a lot to get some of the properties on tax roll also, because I've had things that have come across my desk that we've signed off on and their sales, and they're going to help them with fixing it up and putting it back on the tax roll. So I think her office is doing an awesome job also for the city.
Well, I'm so grateful you said that too, because then you think about what One Holyoke CDC does, right? They using those block grant funds to sort of help with the valuations. It's really great. And then Sandy, just off to the side, at some point, I don't know what that point's going to be. I hope it's when I'm still a counselor, but at some point, we had an interesting discussion a couple of weeks ago with the DOR relative to its their statement about creating a chief administrative financial officer and essentially eviscerating your position. And that's something that I'm not going to ask you to comment on that now because it's not reasonable. But that's something I am going to ask you to comment on down the road, Sandy. And I'll certainly contact you offline. But I think we're gonna need to hear from you sooner rather than later.
I'm willing to give you my comment right now. I think it would be the best thing for the city if anything we can combine the tax collector treasurer or make this position a financial advisor. There's so many cities and towns in our area that have a tax collector treasurer, and it just would be so better off economically for our city. I really think it would bring us into, I guess you would call it the 21st century, or it would be a smart move, a very smart move. And I, on a professional level, would say yes, 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 yes. Okay,
well, that's very helpful, and it really helps clarify things for me, Sandy. But I certainly want to talk to you more about that, and I appreciate your frankness. Okay.
Yep, I'm in my office 5 days a week, 8 to 4.
I think I know where to find you.
Okay, thanks. Take care.
Councillor Mcgarrett.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a question on the budget. It's on page 45. It's Sandy, it's object code 59290, known as short-term debt.
Yep.
Short-term debt is, according to the request and the mayor is allowing, up significantly. Can you tell us why?
Well, we have some projects. As you know, we have a lot of projects that have not been completed, so we have to put a band on them and only pay the interest on that until those projects are complete. And if Tanya's still on the line, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of it has to do with the Jackson Street, and I believe, I'm not too sure what else the other project is.
I feel like it's a culmination of all of the short-term debt, all of the school accelerated repair, and there's a couple street light projects out there. So it's a
That was
culmination.
the other one. Yeah.
Yeah. And we actually get that figure from our bond council. That's a number that they give us in our bond book to tell us what we are going to owe that next year for our short-term debt.
Well, it looks like last year, or I'm sorry, this current year, you hit it right on the nose, actually went a little bit over, so that's fine. There is a history to this line item where it's been used in the past as a go-to fund, because if we don't see exactly what these projects are, it's easy to put a number in here that's higher than what you actually need. But seeing I trust both of you ladies, I'm not going to ask you to document that for me. I'll take your word for it, because you certainly have been transparent in everything you both have done, and we appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Leahy and Councillor Lisi, are those hands from prior or still? No. So Councillor Leahy, do you have to go again or?
Oh, no, Todd, I'm sorry. I forgot to lower it, so I'm all set.
All right, Councillor Lisi, you're all set? Okay. Are there any other questions for Sandy tonight? Seeing no hands. Thank you, Sandy, very much for everything. If there's any follow-up or anything new, I know you'll reach out to us. So thank you very much for everything.
Well, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Next is the auditor. That is on page 3. Tanya, are you there?
I sure am.
How are you?
Pretty good. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for being here. Any opening comments or anything you want to share with us, and then we'll jump into the budget.
So all I really want to say is I'm pretty level funded from last year, which worked out perfectly for our office. We did put in some of the NAGE contract raises for the staff and their longevity. But other than that, I'm pretty level funded. So whatever questions you have, I'm happy to answer.
All right, first one in the queue is Councillor Mcgarrett.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tanya, welcome again. Seems like it's been every night this week you've been with us. The recap sheet and the budget is based, according to the mayor, and I think you agree, or I'm sorry, I did ask you earlier, that the numbers that we're getting from the state are only the governor's numbers, and everything is based on that. With everything that's going on, not just with COVID, but everything that's going on in the state level, what are your projections in terms of the recap sheet and our deficit here? Is it based on the revenue that may not be coming in, or is it just based on what revenue we know and anticipate should come in?
Is based on the revenue that we know and that should come in. But the issue with cutting it and not really knowing what the state is going to do is very difficult, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're facing layoffs or you're cutting operational budgets to the point of where they can't function. So we're also getting a lot of COVID assistance. We're going to be filing for a lot of reimbursements, which will be actually for fiscal year 20 that we will see in fiscal year 2021. So we're going to have to take a look at what's coming in for those reimbursements as well. So I think we did the best that we could. We did look at our local receipts, something that we have more of an idea of what's going to happen, and we did reduce those by 10%. So I think we just have to look towards the future and see what happens. And I have to say that the auditors in other cities that I've spoke to have done similar.
And that's fair under the circumstances, under the times. I think it's the nature of the times, but we typically, this is not unusual with the state, not knowing the exact or even close to the exact numbers of what we'll be receiving. And being a gateway community, much of our budget is based on funds that come from the state. And it's a little bit unfair to the city council, and I guess with the COVID situation, there's not much we can do, but it's a little bit unfair to the city council because we only get the 45 days to do our job. and that's to try to balance the budget or to agree with it with affordability in terms of expenditures. So if there is any news between now and the 29th, when the president has our last meeting scheduled, I would greatly appreciate it. You could upgrade the recap sheet and let us know, as it goes, whatever the revenue picture might be. This year was a big nightmare in that, the DOR, DLS, whoever you want to call them these days, illegally cut, $1.7 million of our free cash that we should have had. I want to know right now, have our department heads shored up there? I'm going to ask each of them, especially the ones that will have multiple grants. Have they shored up their grants? Are there any deficiencies that are running right now in fiscal 20 that we're going to have an impact in fiscal 21?
The department heads have until June 30th actually to submit their reimbursements to the grant associations. So I'm in the process actually of posting some cash receipts. I'm going to send their information out to them, asking them to update me on all of their different grants, what reimbursements they file, so that way I can get a better idea of where we stand. We do have conversations about it. I do question a lot of expenses. We look at different accounts and we contact department heads. This is in deficit. Can you tell us when you're going to be putting in your reimbursement for this, so that we can keep track, so nothing goes too far?
So it sounds like we don't know again. I would hope that the mayor is meeting with department heads that have grants on a weekly basis to make sure at the end of this year that these things are shored up and that we don't face a nightmare with DLS again. Is that happening?
Tanya, you're on mute based on my screen.
Oh, sorry about that. So I can't say that the mayor is meeting on a weekly weekly with the department heads, but I can say that the auditor's office is reaching out on a weekly basis to department heads, questioning expenses, questioning deficits, and trying to keep on top of the very many grant funds that we do have in the city.
We appreciate that, Tanya. And if you could let us know if there are any issues, because free cash is going to be very important this coming year. And we're not going to see what we had this year to save us, and that's the single family home value increase. And that was a one-time gift from DOR after they took away. I should apologize to DOR. I don't want to say illegally, but certainly didn't give the city council a chance to vote on it, which we should have voted on it, my opinion. But I do believe this is the time, or actually it should have been before June, that this should have been worked on, and the department head should be, clearing up a few minor things now, not major. I hope that's the case.
They definitely have been reconciling quite often. I get calls all the time.
How about the school department?
I'm always reconciling with them. I can't really speak to where they stand with their grants. They have a ton of grants. But I do work with them on a daily basis, trying to straighten out their grant funding.
If I was the mayor, it's very simple with the departments. This past year was, shame on you for not reconciling and making sure your grants are up to date. This coming year, if it happens again, it's shame on me for letting you do it again. But that's the way this has to happen, because $1.7 million is unfathomable, and just I've never seen that in 40 years, allowing that to happen. Thank you, Tanya.
I do have something to add to that, though, which is in the conversation with the external auditors, that 1.7 figure has been going down on a yearly basis for 4 years. You just didn't realize it because you had free cash. So that number, that 1.7 that you see in those grants funds, is actually lower than what you were paying in previous years, but you didn't spend all your budget appropriation, so you did see free cash in your budget. You just didn't know it. That's all I wanted to add.
Free cash has to be reappropriated by state law. That requires a vote of the city council. So if we didn't see it, then the predecessor that you took over for didn't show it to us.
So you just didn't see the fund deficits because you had free cash. You never questioned.
But we had notifications from DLS, you know, that there were deficiencies, and we had sometimes told that, you know, this would be worked out this way, and a deal was worked out to have it in the next budget to do so much to work it out. And then we find out 5 years later that didn't come true. Am I correct?
I understand. Yes, I understand.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. President?
Councillor Graney, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question for Tanya. Tanya, it's been published in the newspapers here or there that the lottery sales have decreased quite a bit in the state. Do you have any idea how significant the hit's going to be to Holyoke at all?
I'm really not aware at this time, and we don't get the payment until after the end of the year.
So there's no indication of the percentages or anything like that of the lottery sales that have gone down?
I haven't actually looked it up. I could do a little research if you'd like and get back to you, but I haven't really been on top of the lottery sales.
Yeah, it's more curiosity than anything else, but it is. I know we get quite a bit of money from the state on the lottery sales, so I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Bacon? Councillor, you're on mute still. Councillor Bacon, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Tanya, for reminding us about the previous $2 million that had been written down on the free cash for a number of years. I think the problem that we had isn't that the $1.7 million was a shock, but that it had been an ongoing arena that had not been addressed over a number of years. And simply because the free cash balance became so low, we got actually hit in the face with it, to your point. However, the reality is because of the loose control over the grants, and I want to really thank you for following up on those each week with the department heads. I really think you're doing the work of a chief fiscal officer. This is the kind of thing that will bring us back in line. The lack of attention to it is what lost us $2 million of free cash for the previous year before that. So we just didn't feel it so much because we weren't really paying attention to the level of detail, but it really has added up to a lot of money. So I want to really thank you for that.
You're welcome. I agree with what you're saying.
Councillor Lisi.
Thank you. I was just going to make a similar point to what Councillor Bacon just mentioned, and work to, I think, clarify this point that Tanya made about the, you know, the $1.7 to $2 million that has been coming out of our free cash every single year has been coming out of the undesignated fund balance. But we've had enough reserves in that undesignated fund that we haven't felt that hit, and we felt it for the first time, and it took our attention for the first time last year because it hit us with our free cash estimate. Yeah, so I think we have that list now of the, I think it was 37 different line items that were counted against us in creating some of these deficits that had to be made up by free cash. Tanya, are you working systematically through that list, or are you working just with departments on better management of their grants and other funds?
I'm actually working on all of those things.
Great.
The issue for me is that, or not even just for me, but for the city, is that many of those grants are old. So if they've been in deficit for years, the only way that you are going to cover those deficits is to take money out of your operating fund and pay those deficits off. So that would have to be something that the mayor would approve. I'm sure it would come to city council because your general fund dollars are going to have to pay those deficits in order for us to get them off of that list. The current ones we can work with, and at the end of the year, I do some small journal entries to cover the small deficits, but it's the larger deficits that we need to get that money from somewhere to pay them off, you know?
Yeah, and do you think that it is, so do they each have to be settled through the departments that they were in, or can the mayor kind of create a lump appropriation to settle all these deficits? Like what would your, I guess, policy recommendation be on how we address those outstanding deficits that are from prior years?
I think we could do an appropriation in the budget that says transfer to special revenue accounts and use that. I think departments could definitely do a transfer to cover their special revenue deficits if that's what they chose to do. So we could do either. We could, if we were to get free cash and the mayor approved of it, we could use free cash to cover some of those deficits. So there are ways to cover them.
I think we need to try to settle them before we ask DLS to certify our free cash.
Oh, definitely. Whatever we can.
Are the schools were one of the bigger quote unquote offenders of some of these outstanding grants? Do we have a relationship or a contact there that's working on their end to bring those grants into current status?
Yes, they actually just, I believe they promoted somebody from within to be like their main grant manager. Okay. Somebody that takes the time to look at all the different grants, works with the accountants, make sure their expenses are being charged off appropriately. So I think that was a good move.
And
Tanya, we lost. Hold on, Tanya, you want to mute?
Sorry, every time my computer shuts down, it goes on mute.
All right, there you go.
Sorry, I just lost the. So they have someone managing the grants, the undesignated fund. I got a little bit distracted. Yeah, and so do we think that person? So we wrap up our year in a matter of days, weeks, right? 2 weeks roughly. Right. We'll wrap up our year, and I know that DLS has been generous previously in terms of giving us, several days, like 30 to 90 days to remedy those deficits. But do we think that this person, the new grants manager, will have that wrapped up by the end of our fiscal year, or do you think that we may need to spill over and ask for some consideration from DLS?
I think she's doing the best that she can from the position that she's in and just moving in there, especially with the situation with COVID and not everybody being, same as every other department. But she is good. She has tons of experience. So I have to believe that I've seen her send out emails. I've seen her asking about deficits. So that's a good start.
All right. Yes, that's really positive. I appreciate that sort of feedback. Okay, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Tallman for the first time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tanya, for the work you're doing. Good evening.
You're welcome. Good evening.
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions I had concerns about were asked by Councillor Bacon and Councillor Lisi, but a big part of my concern is, moving forward now with the department heads and with the school department. So this, can get, sort of brought down and taken care of over the years. I mean, and I do realize, I think it was talked to us, you stated tonight that it has been going down the last several years, but there's a couple of the deficits there that seem like we've been paying. I think on the Essex House, 98,000 last year, 98,000 this year. And it was very enlightening to hear the DLS come in for our meeting, our finance ordinance meeting a couple weeks ago. I think a lot of us learned a lot. I learned a lot that night about, our structure as in the financial departments of our city, how possibly we look to the road, down the road to change things, to make things, work better for the city. But my concerns is, as several of my counselors, is to sort of move forward, try to get these deficits down, so we don't get a position that we were in this past year. So that's my major concern.
Tanya, you got muted again, Tanya.
Sorry about
There
that.
you go.
So this upcoming year, I'm going to change it up a little bit, and I'm going to change the protocol for the grants where I'm seeing all of the invoices before they go anywhere. Nobody knows that yet. But that way I can get a grip on what's going on. I just needed to straighten up some other things before I started implementing a lot of change.
That's great. I appreciate that, because I think we have to just start sort of where the position there. We have to move forward. I mean, we can't change what happened. We can't change the $1.7 million that was taken away from us. So we just have to move forward, try to cut our losses in the future years, especially with we're not knowing what kind of budget year we're going to have this coming fiscal year. But I will be in touch, and I'm sure you've been very receptive to the council anytime we have any questions. And we will be in touch in the future, in the coming weeks, before the end of the fiscal year. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councillor Bacon, your hand is still up. Do you have any questions? All set? Okay, all set. Councillor McGivern.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. Tanya, I'm a little grumpy tonight, but I think there's good reason to be grumpy on some of these things. I mean, in the police department, I'm going to ask the chief in a few minutes. I think he's still listening to us. You know, the Safer grant, $224,386. You know, there was a number of different things, but it was across the board. Safe Success Youth, jail diversion. But the school department, you know, there was some stuff in the school department that just made no sense whatsoever. That we had to take money out of the general fund budget, and you just said that, and that's the part that I'm upset about, is that I get it. We use grants to sometimes fund things that should be in the general fund budget, but a grant, when it's expended, it should be over. And if it's overexpended, there's no excuse. But these are things like the Safer grant. They're things that are renewable each year and are ongoing. And the bilingual grants in the school department are renewed each year. So why we have to balance them at the end of the year to take the money out of the general fund, and then, as you said, when we met with DLS and DOR, most of it goes back in the upcoming year, and then becomes free cash for the next year. I mean, that to me is an accounting nightmare for you and for the city council and us lay people. It's just no accounting. I don't get it. And I understand what Tanya Campbell said to us, our outside auditor, about this has been going on and things have happened in prior years and we just didn't know this. But in prior years, we took votes. You know, before we set the tax rate, we had to take a vote and use free cash to put the free cash against the ceiling or against the deficit. And it was always a combined vote. We were explained by the auditor at the time that we were voting on this. This past year, we didn't vote on this. It was just, we had a negative free cash fund thrown at us in December, and there was no question, no vote taken by the city council on that $1.7 million. Now that's what I want to see corrected. And that's why I'm upset with DLS and DOR, because they would not answer that question when I asked it. Why did we not have to vote this year, where in prior years, the city council always voted on balancing the budget and right before we set the tax rate?
Understood. This is only my second free cash year, so I've never been here in the past where you did.
I'm not yelling at you. I'm not yelling at anybody.
Okay.
I'm just being grumpy, and you just happen to be the person that, you know, is our voice and the messenger. And I agree with everybody here. You're doing a great job. And I think that's just saying we made a great choice, even though it took us too long to finally fill the position. Keep up the good work, Tanya.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry you're grumpy.
Okay.
All right. If there's no more questions for Tanya, thank you very much for everything. I know there'll be updates coming, so we'll be looking forward to them. With that, we'll now turn to page 17 and 18 and go to the police department. And with that, we'll turn it over to the chief. How are you? Still a lovely background.
Thank you.
Any updates, anything to start off before we get into those pages?
Yeah, I'll just throw out there that I'm a little concerned that Councillor Mcgarrett's grumpy tonight. Let's hope he feels better in the next few minutes. The personnel side of the budget is the personnel side of the budget. I mean, it's pretty much contractual. We added we anticipated the passing of the patrolman's contract, so those numbers are reflected in there, so we don't try to backtrack later. Just throwing that out there. The expense side, I do see some problems with that. Moving forward, the data maintenance line items, I believe, is short about 45,000. So I'm definitely coming back for that. I think the ammunition line item is short about 7,500, and repair maintenance motor vehicle line item is going to be short 20 to 40,000, depending upon the motor vehicles. And we're going to do the best we can to keep them running and keep that under control. But we're pretty short on the expense side. So that's my concern with that. I'm ready for questions and answers.
Well, first, welcome. And with that, with the chief here, are there any questions to start off with him with regards to the budget? I'll look to the screen for hands. Or up. First one up is Councillor Mcgarrett, who is no longer grumpy, Chief.
No longer grumpy, Chief. It's that background that you bring into the meeting, you know?
That's for you, Joe.
Hey, just Sergeant Hart was with us last night. As always, John does a great job. As far as the 388 contract that we're going to vote on next week, you got enough money to cover the rest for this fiscal year?
Yeah, I'll just throw out there that I am actually in attendance here with Sergeant Hart and Captain Pratt. We should be able to cover everything. Yes, we moved over 8,000 because we have 17,000 in the patrolman's line item. I know I still have to write a note. Councilor Tallman, he wanted a note or something, but that's the deal. It's in there to cover that 26,000, and we can do that out of this year's budget, provided we act, swiftly.
And the amount of patrolmen for next year, the budget that we're talking about this evening, is it fully funded for patrol officers?
Yes. Okay,
because this year it's been down to about 88. I think the ordinance reads a lot more.
Yeah, no, we're funded. We've been funded for a few years now at 90. We're looking at this coming year 88. But what happened with that this year is we're doing and the auditor can help you with this also. Is remember the SRO thing? It's more of an academic fix. We have 88, but then in a separate line item now we have SRO for 2, and the school department's paying those salaries. So we still at 90, but it's just looking a little different this year. That's all.
Okay. And my friend, the new sheriff in the auditor's office, just told us that she's working close with you guys on the grants, so DLS doesn't get to take a shot at us again.
Yeah, absolutely. Her and Sergeant Hart have been constant communication. I can tell you right now, we're squared away. I'm sure she'll tell you the same. In the last couple of years, I think there is some issues that we had under a previous administration with the SSYI grant, and to the tune of like 134,000. It's our understanding that may have been cleared up in that, the DOR and all that free cash from last year. However, that's my understanding. As far as you mentioned a minute ago, the SAFER grants, that's the fire department. So right out there. It's not us.
I'm sorry. I always get the SAFER and the your big grant.
Shannon grant. Right. Shannon grant, yeah.
Shannon grant. Sorry, my mistake.
Yep.
I should have got Jeff last night.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Tallman. You're on mute, Councillor Tallman.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you
for being here tonight. A couple of questions on your budget. Line item 51510.
What's the title on that? I have mine kind of by name. So
okay,
look to the left.
Buyback? Sick leave buyback.
Okay, sick leave buyback. Okay.
Was cut about 125,000.
Yep, I'm anticipating 2 supervisors and 4 patrolmen, so
that may not be enough.
No, that's probably not going to be enough if they all go, and I'll be back.
Okay, and the holiday differential is quite a bit too, over 70,000 cut.
Let me pull that sheet up, sir. Yeah, that's probably going to be short too, especially with the new
It froze up.
329, 609. And so we shouldn't be too far off on that.
Okay.
But we might be short, but we're not going to be too short on that one. I'm not overly concerned about that line
Right.
item.
And in the coming fiscal, you say you're looking at possibly 6 retirees coming up?
6 retirees, Chief? You're looking at possible
Yes.
6?
Yes, I'm anticipating 2 supervisors and 6.
But
4 patrolmen, 2 supervisors.
So, but that could change. You might get more at the last minute. A couple could change their mind and let you know 2 weeks ahead of time.
That's what happened this fiscal year.
Right. And Chief, the other quick question I had, I'm sure you heard last night, I talked to Sergeant Hart. It's just that unusual with the contract that we had the 8,000, but we were still missing the 17,000. We weren't used to doing it. I've never remember used to saying, well, there's money in there. Usually we see a transfer from a line item. How are you going to have that set up for us for Tuesday night?
Well, I think it's going to be just transferred out of since we moved the 8,000 into the patrolman's line item, we're just going to make that happen from that line item. As far as the academic, how it happens, I think the auditors, Tanya can probably answer that question better.
Okay, is Tanya still in?
Tanya's still here. Tanya, you're on mute.
I'm still here.
Yep.
So,
is that appropriate
because,
the way they're doing it?
Yeah, because they don't need any more additional dollars in that line item besides that $8,000. So he's already supporting some of that transfer. It's already in that line. It needs no appropriation.
And that's coming out. So, but that's for the contract. So he's taking some from somewhere to make up the 17,000.
Well, he's had some open positions probably in his patrolman line that freed up some money. That would be my guess.
Okay.
So he already has that money in that line.
Okay. It seems like a contract. I just don't recall. I've been doing this for about 20 years and don't recall any kind of where we actually would see the transfer of a certain amount of money added onto the free cash money, the 186. And it's just, I have nothing against the contract, but just the way they're doing it.
Yep. He just doesn't, you don't want to appropriate more money in that line if he doesn't need it in there.
Okay.
Right.
That's that's all right. I believe the law department said that's okay. I just want to make sure because it's physically we're not really seeing the transfer from one line to the other. He's just saying it's there, but
it's there.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Oh, thank you.
Council.
How many patrolmen we have right now, counting the 2 in the schools?
We are right around 90, I believe. That's correct. 90. Yeah, 90. And we have an academy class. They've been postponing the academy class, and we have 2 that are in the academy right now doing an online type because of COVID that are coming out, but they're on the books. So we have 90 right now.
So we're fully staffed.
So we're fully staffed. Yes, we're fully staffed.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, first, Chief, thank you very much, especially for your leadership and maintaining calm in the last couple of weeks. It was appreciated.
Thank you.
First thing, just looking at the overtime account, and I looked at what the mayor offered to give you and what you have spent already. I mean, clearly, two things. Number one, obviously, that's not enough. But the other aspect to that is, are there staffing things that we can do that would provide us with the police protection that we need and be in a position also to lower overtime? I mean, again, I'll go back to the patrolman. If we were to add either a supervisor or a patrolman, would that give us a chance to lower overtime expense?
Well, anytime you add positions, like let's say theoretically you add 15 patrol officers, that would probably, no doubt, reduce overtime. There's no question about it. That's just 101. But the likelihood of that happening is, I mean, it's probably not going to happen, right? Should I ask for 15 more patrolmen?
Yeah. So let me just, I'm going to I'll throw out an 8 number for you. So let's say you added 8 patrolmen and they were, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm going to assume a lot of overtime is done on 2nd and 3rd shift.
Yep, correct.
So if I were to add 8 patrolmen and I had 4 on the second shift and 4 on the third shift, and then I had some people that were, and let me, I'm assuming injured on duty also creates some overtime.
No, when somebody goes up, well, yeah, it does. When
Okay.
if I have to
Yeah,
replace somebody,
yeah,
on overtime, yeah, but you know, if there's extra guys on shift, it really shouldn't make a difference.
So let me again go to the 8 numbers, and you know I'm always advocating. So if you had that, you'd be in it, and I think the salary was about 62,000. Add fringe benefits, they make it 80,000. If I had 8, I'm adding about 600,000. But if I reduced overtime by 50%, that 8 patrolmen only cost me about 200,000.
Yeah, you're never going to reduce overtime by 50% for it's a complicated formula. There's all kinds of issues. I mean, we've been spending, you know, overtime. My first year as chief, I was given last year $300,000. I didn't come back and ask for overtime. It's not by I'm not a genius or anything. It's the hard work of Sergeant Hart. He basically, he's out there every day pleading with the state and federal grants and local grants. And he does a lot of great work. He brings in a lot of money that helps us run the police department. This year I was given $350,000 for overtime in my budget. And clearly there's nobody on planet Earth that can run this police department with $350,000 in overtime, but we make it happen through the hard work of Sergeant Hart and the grants.
But we actually spent more than 800,000.
Absolutely, and we have for the last 15 years. Actually, I look back because I watched yesterday's meeting a little bit last night. I watched it this morning on YouTube, and so I knew these questions were coming back. I went with my sheet here. I went all the way back to 06 under Chief Scott. He spent $916,330. Now, when you look at that, you think about projecting that into how many contracts with the 3 unions I have in the building have passed over the last 14 years. And then you look at what we spend today, you'll see there's been cuts. We're doing less hours. We're doing more work with less hours. That's, if you project that into today's dollars, I mean, it's just what we spend. It's what it costs to run the police department.
So you also requested 149,000 on reserves, and the mayor authorized 100,000.
That's correct.
Last year you had 150,000.
Yep, and I had to transfer 28,000 to cover the bulletproof vest.
Right, and I do recall you telling me that the reserves give you a chance to see who could become a good police officer.
Absolutely,
they get experience. So obviously, again, going to the issues that are out there, a person being able to be a reserve officer gives you a chance to qualify their qualities as a police officer, rather than having somebody become. So, I mean, I just would encourage us to, and I would encourage the mayor, and I will try to encourage the mayor to, give you a full complement of reserve officers, so that you do have, and obviously you're spending some of that money, and again, they're working with your patrol officers, so you're getting some additional police coverage, but you're also getting to see what they're doing, and they're working with people that are already on the job. And again, one last thing, and then and that was in terms of the education and training. And again, can you just give me education and training budget, and that's line item 53190.
Let me just find it 1 second.
Yep. I mean, I've got down that you spend. I'll just talk while you're looking, Chief.
Well, hold on, Councilor Murphy, if I may, for people at home and for Councilor Graney, because he did ask. Okay. On page 18, 53190, education and training is where Councilor Murphy is going to.
Okay, thank you. So again, you spent already 51,000. And to be cut down to 40,000. Can you just go over what the education and training, specifically what that is?
Okay, well, the education and training right off the bat, I asked for 55,000. It was cut to 40,000. $11,000 of that right away goes to the Holyoke Revolver Club, so we can use that to train our officers twice a year, mandated MPTC training council with our firearms and rifles. So the 11,000 right off the top goes to the Holyoke Revolver Club annual contract. And it covers officers going to any type of training. Training is very important in this field, as we see every day. It also pays our officers who are instructors and they teach our in-service. So we have to, you know, train the trainer. So we send them to training and they come back and we save a lot of money by having them train rather than sending our officers all over the state to the other academies. And it pays for the police academy when we send new recruits or reserves to the police academy. So far this year, we spent $53,000. We transferred in $3,000 to cover that gap of $50,000 of this year. So is it short? It may or may not be. I'm not overly concerned in the sense that I'm not sure. I think we spent this year, I think we sent 16 reserves to the part-time reserve police academy, which is why I was able to use that the 28,000 to transfer over to cover the bulletproof vest match out of that line item, because we weren't spending the hourly rate to have those guys out in the cruisers. They were just doing nights and weekends, getting through their, it was just good timing for that. Okay. So that's where it was a good thing.
Okay. And again, I'll just, if you find that you need more training money, I would encourage you to come back to us and have us help apply for it, because I mean, I think obviously we're in a trying time, a difficult time, and let's make sure that we all get to work as a community. And I know you're doing your best to make it a community policing environment. And again, I thank you for your service, and thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan? Councillor Sullivan, you're on mute. You're on mute still. There you go.
Okay. Hi, Chief. How are you?
Hello. Hello. How are you, Mike?
Okay. On line item 51109, the reserves that Councilor Murphy just talked about.
Yeah.
And so far in fiscal 2019, we only spent 56,000, and so far, you know, as of June 10th of this year, we've only spent 74,000. Right. So, you know, given the trend over the last 2 years and the, you know, the TBD number, I see the mayor already cut it 100,000, but, you know, real level spending on this compared to what we did the last 2 years would be more in the neighborhood of 75, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the difference, Mike, is they spent this year. They were mostly in training. The year before that, we didn't have many reserves. That many. We're up to, I believe, 19 reserves right now. My goal is to get up to 24, but we have 19. That's 19 officers that I want to keep in cruisers, especially to reduce overtime if I can, to cover for full-time officers. Once they're fully trained and we have them able to run cruisers solo, but I want to have them training and in cruisers nights and weekends, never really on day shift, where they're going to be, and nights and weekends. So that's the difference. The difference is moving forward. We have these guys. They're out of the academy. They're working now. They're ready to go. Where we didn't have that 2 years ago, I think we had like 5 or 6 or 7, and we're always chasing the tail. But Lieutenant Reyes did a fantastic job in getting a hold of civil service, getting the list, and you guys did a great job making sure that we were fully funded the last couple of years. And yeah, it fluctuates, but this is the year moving forward where we have 19 and they're ready to work. So I wish we had the 149, but the 100 is, I don't want to go below that. I mean, they're going to be out there, they're going to be working, and we're going to use every penny of that, probably most of it over the summer, but year round.
Well, we've only got 3 weeks left in the year, and we've only spent $74,000 in this year.
Yeah, they've been in the police academy most of this year.
Okay, so basically the costs have gone up over the last, maybe not as much was expended in the first 6 months as the last 6 months. Is that?
That's correct, and that's why I moved the money to cover the bulletproof vests out of that, and I was very comfortable doing it at the time.
Okay, gotcha. So line item 51204, the senior clerk.
Stand by. I just got to find it in my book. Give me 1 second. How far down is it, gentlemen?
It's about halfway down personal services.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I was actually asking Prater and these guys, but that helps too. Part-time. Oh, okay, support salaries, that's where I have it. Okay, what's your question?
About the same there. We've only, as of June 1st, we've only spent $140,000. We had 201,000 in the budget. We're asking for the same amount again, but we've only spent 140. Is there?
I think we had a gap where we recently hired some parts. Am I correct on that? We just hired, was that dispatcher, part-time dispatchers, or part-time senior clerks? I think we did both, right? I think we recently hired. We had a short period of time during the year where we didn't have, we weren't fully staffed part-time senior clerks.
Okay,
New hires. It looks like on January 11th. Looks like we made some new hires.
Okay. I think where we're going here.
Mr. President?
Councilor Greeny?
Yeah, is Councilor Sullivan finished or?
No,
I
I'm
think
not.
he's just looking through the book right now, Councilor.
I've got a quick line item if I could do.
Well, hold on. Councilor Sullivan's got it right now.
Go ahead. I've got 5 or 6 to go. So if Howie wants to slip one in, go ahead.
All right, Councilor Greeny.
Yeah, it's 53001, Chief.
What's the title, if you don't mind?
53001 Police Cruiser Lease.
Oh, okay. Police cruiser lease. Yep.
Yeah. How many do we lease? How many do we own? Who maintains them, and who do we lease them from?
Well, it's not technically a lease. It's really it's called a cruiser lease. But we bought 6 marked new cruisers, and what it was is the payment was divided up into 2 years. Last year we paid 1 payment, and then this year out of this budget will be the final installment for those 6 cruisers. We maintain them ourselves. There is some level of warranty, but I think we kind of wash through those pretty quick. But we maintain them. There's the lease is it's not traditional lease. It's confusing, but it's 6 cruisers.
Okay, and who do we lease, or who do we buy them or lease them from?
We got those through MHQ. Yeah, we got those through MHQ. That's where most of the departments in Massachusetts buy their cruisers from. They're the state vendor. But Marcotte is online. Moving forward, we should be able to get vehicles right here in the city of Holyoke and have them maintained right here on Main Street, which would be fantastic.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear, Chief. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. We tried to go there at the time, but they weren't quite ready with the state vendor list. But they're ready now.
Okay, super. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Back to Councilor Sullivan.
Okay, thank you. So Chief, line item 51590, which is court appearances.
Okay, give me 1 second. Pull that tab up here. Got it. Go.
Okay, so as of June 1st, we've only spent 77,000.
Yeah, the courts have been closed. They closed up a few months ago. So, I mean, this is a bizarre year. We really, I would hate to start looking at this year as the, what's the future should look like. If you want, we look at the 3-year average. We have a 3-year average, just under 200,000. I requested 155. It was cut to 135. I think that's a pretty good adjustment considering, I believe, Joe, maybe you can help me out. The courts are probably going to open up and be a firestorm of cases coming soon. They open right up.
I think what's going to happen is you're going to see, more cases on a weekly basis than you're used to. And
right.
That's going to happen not real quick, but once it happens, there's a backlog of juries that are going to trials that are going to have to take place. And never mind all the motions where most of your officers testify is when there's a motion.
Yep. That's correct. So Councilor Sullivan, that I really hope we don't cut that because that's probably going to be needed. And the reason it's short this year, obviously 77,544 was when they closed the doors. So.
Okay.
Can I just throw something right out there? Because
go ahead.
I looked into it. We're anticipating, because of the parade and because the courts were shut down and because of other like special events and things, I'm anticipating giving back to the general fund the tune of 160,000 right around there at the end of this fiscal year here. Just throwing it out there so you know.
Okay, well, that's good news.
Yeah.
So line over on the expense side, we've got 53210 for medical.
Yep.
But showing as of June 1st, of the 30,000 we had budgeted, we'd only spent 4,500, and 25,000 had been transferred out of that account to other accounts.
Yeah, we have a 3-year average of 15,000. It pays for all full-time and reserves medical and psych exams. Stand by. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're looking at, but it looks here like we have a balance of stand by. $55 in there. Let me see it.
No, you're correct on that, but that's because 25,400 was transferred out in eight transfers over the course of the year. Only 4,500 has been 4,545 was actually spent out of the account.
Yep. Yeah, we had to move some money around definitely on the expense side of the budget this year. Looks like some went to data maintenance, which is one of the items that I talked about that we're going to be short on this year, $45,000 in the expense side. Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, it does look that we transferred out into different areas.
Well, you told me your 2-year average was 15,000, so.
Yeah, it was.
I think I got one I can go after you for.
Come after me. I got a lot going on, but yeah, I have a 3-year. It's a 3-year average. I have written down here 15,000.
All right.
Okay.
Then I guess the only other one I'd question right now would be 54800 on motor vehicle fuel.
Okay, 1 second. Yeah, motor vehicle fuel. Yep.
Yeah.
I requested 125. 3-year average is 117. The mayor cut to 110. Fuel pays for fuel. It also pays for the DPW employee to be there at the pumps from 7 a.m. to 11. Yeah. What about it?
Okay. Well, just as of June 1st, we'd only spent 80,000. The price of fuel has been down. It looks. Everything I've seen lately, the price of fuel is way down compared to this time last year and going through the year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Yep. What's that?
All right, so
yeah,
let me do a little more looking at that, and I'll probably give you a phone call over the next couple of days. But
yeah, just throw it out there. Yeah, I understand the price of fuel is down, but I just want to point out to all of the councilors that the expense side of the budget it's already down. So I mean, like if I had the luxury of having a few extra dollars in there, whether it's 20,000 or 30,000, it's going to make up the gaps in like data maintenance and repair motor vehicle and the ammunition. Definitely short.
Yeah. Okay, that's it for me for now.
All right, Councillor Lisi.
Hi, Chief. Thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
I have a question about, so where would flagging, like the traffic details and stuff like that, what would that come under in terms of overtime? Is that all under regular overtime, or is it?
No, that's paid for by private companies. That's the construction company pays for that. hires an off-duty officer to work, and it has nothing to do with our budget. Zero.
So it's not in your budget at all?
No, absolutely not. If they work at Stop and Shop or any private companies or construction companies, they pay that themselves to the officers off duty.
Okay, and then, for example, if like the DPW needs a traffic detail, that then becomes part of DPW's contract that we pay to the city, and then to the police department, and there's no record of that then? Because
well, the DPW would then hire through our detail officer, an off-duty officer, and yeah.
And so that never becomes an expenditure within your department. That's always going to be on somebody else's department side.
Correct. Mm-hmm. They need them, they pay for them.
And so it's not going to be part of like your rate or savings. There's no way to gain savings around that.
Well, I love that you asked that question, because just in the past year and a half ago, we started what we call the detail tracking system, where the city, let's just put it this way, the detail tracking system is in our data maintenance line item. It costs us like $13,000, I can flip to that page, but $13,400 something dollars. And that's a year. And what that does is it generates, in the past one and a half years, it's generated to the general fund, not to us, but to the general fund, over $103,000. And it's a phenomenal thing. So for a $13,500 or $400 investment, you know, you're getting $100,000 into the general fund. And then what that does is that charges a 10% fee to the companies, the construction companies, for to pay for the detail tracking system. And it's been working out really well. And it's money that's generated for the city. It's phenomenal for the price. For $13,400 and something in my data maintenance line item, that's the cost that we have to run that detail tracking system, and it's bringing in tenfold.
Right, but at the same time, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that it may be some private company that is paying, you know, into that $103,000, but at the end of the day, if we're contracting through DPW or any other department for that private company, it's really the city paying for it again. No. Right? We're the ones that are paying for that private company to do the work and contract with the city, and then therefore they're building that cost into their bid, and then the city's paying for it.
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask the DPW about that. I mean, but the DPW calls up and they need an officer to direct traffic around one of their projects. When they bid out the project to whatever company, or what, if they're doing it, yeah, it's.
And I know, you know, we've been down this road before, but is there anything that legally requires a you know, a fully badged officer to do the traffic detail as opposed to the auxiliary?
Well, you have unions in the city that are just not going to have that. I mean, it's been down this road. It's been hashed out. There's a huge difference between having a police officer and having a flagman. Is that where you're going with that? Yeah. Well, I mean, that's between the city and the unions. I think having police officers, the more boots on the ground, are definitely worth it. There's been many cases where our officers have intervened in life-saving, whether it's performing CPR or making actual arrests immediately after homicides. That's happened right from a road job detail. More eyes and ears from trained police officers that are on the street, the better. I mean, we can have this discussion all day if you want, but there is union issues. There have been studies across. It's just better to have a police officer out there. We can agree to disagree on that.
Yeah, sure. And then finally, I don't see like the auxiliary police in your budget, and I'm just unsure about where I know we recently reorganized the way that we pay for them.
They're in here, $6,000. They've been in here for $6,000 on the expense side of the budget for many years.
I just see the training. Is that all that it is? It's the training as opposed to like the utilization of them? So I see auxiliary police first responder training at $6,000, but I don't think of that as them being like deployed or utilized in some way, or are they just always on call?
No, well, they do a lot. They do a lot for us. They help us through every major event. I mean, we can go down the list of fireworks, the parades, the road race. They help us out whenever we call them when we have an unanticipated event. They do backup for us when we cannot fill the road jobs, like the directing traffics. They fall back for us, and they do a fantastic job there. I mean, they get $6,000 a year. They do a lot of their in-house training, right up to the MPTC training standards. They have a lot of their own officers who are just fantastic trainers, and they're volunteer for us. And they do church details. They do, I think, 200 hours of community service volunteer a year. I mean,
they're
not sure
fully
where to go.
volunteer. It's just the training that you're paying for. Is that how it works?
It's the 6,000. The 6,000 pays for their first responder, the CPR, some equipment. They buy laptops for the War Memorial basement there where they're at. Pays. There's a detail fee that pays. It's a small price, little odds and ends. It keeps them running, and they do more volunteer work than anybody can imagine. Believe me, that's the money well spent there.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering why I didn't see any other expenditures. Now I understand it's fully volunteer. I'm all set then. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Tallman?
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Again, that's a question I normally ask every year to the Chief, the fire and the police department. How many employees do you have right now injured on duty?
Right now, I think I have 3 patrolmen right now.
Is it pretty, maybe has it been a few weeks? I know we vote on it every 2 weeks to transfer the money into their line items, but my concern is, a healthy, fit force is a force that uses less overtime, and that's my concern. The more employees you have out of work, you have to utilize overtime, right?
Yeah. I think we've been doing very, very well here as far as injured on duties, and we've been doing very well. And when somebody is once they miss union-wise, if they miss 20 shifts and a doctor says that they can do light duty, then we do bring them back and we give them like a desk job. It encourages the officers to come back full-time when they're ready, and it works out well. We got a good system here. Our guys don't abuse the system, and they do a great job for us. They do a great job for the citizen, and only having 3 out, actually, that's really good right now.
Okay. Vehicles, how are you set on vehicles? I know you said this is the second year of the 6-year payoff.
The 6 new ones they're fantastic. They're doing really well. They're doing great. I have 50 other vehicles roughly that are just another year older and getting pretty rough shape. So I'm hoping that we come back next year. We continue this 2-year program and get 6 more. I'll be asking for 6 more this time next year. And there's really no way around it. I mean, the 50 cars, I'm probably going to take 10 or 12, maybe 15 off the road this year just because they're becoming a hazard. And some of them are becoming too costly to even get inspection stickers for them at this point. So we're making decisions as to which ones we're going to take off the road. But it's a struggle, but we're doing it.
Yeah, it's important to have the vehicles, the safety, and the equipment that you need to do your job. Do you have a dedicated employee mechanic? Is that somebody at the DPW, or you have somebody in your building?
We did hire a mechanic. Fantastic. Eric, he's great. Everybody loves him. He's as sharp as can be. He's an outstanding mechanic. Overwhelmed, to say the least, trying to keep up. I mean, every day he comes in, we have Officer Villamary is our liaison to him, who does the little things while he's doing the major repairs. Right. Officer Villamary makes the arrangements and gets the cars inspected, changes tires, does like the little things that just need to get done. So I do have a guy assigned to take care of that stuff, but we have a great mechanic now who does a great job for us. Super happy.
Yeah, I think that's great that you have that, because I know we worked with a couple of years ago, the DPW, having somebody down there. I don't know if that worked out for fire and police, but I think that could be a savings right there in repair and maintenance of vehicles if you have somebody doing it right in-house. And I know sometimes a job might be bigger, you might have to put out to somewhere else, send them out. But as long as you're happy with that, I'm really pleased to hear that.
Super happy.
Yeah,
this guy's working out great. It's an absolute cost savings, but the reality of it, we do have to send some things out to different local garages that we use to just keep them up and running. Sometimes you can't wait. Sometimes there's three of our line cars that just need to get back up. And I'm not talking about the brand new ones, but there's other line cars that we use every single day.
Yeah, one more brief question. We talked about the school resource officers, I think, in this budget. I know last year we had a little confusion. The city was going to have to pay that 138 or whatever it was. So how does that fit in this year, coming up with the budget for the school resource?
It's just we corrected, thanks to Tanya, we corrected that academic fix. You'll just see them underneath the patrolman's line item. It's 2 SROs. So instead of having 90 patrolmen, we have 88 patrolmen in the line item, and the school department was paying for 2 in the line item right below it. It's academic, but we're still at 90, and it's working out well. It should take care of that problem.
And so the school department is paying for those 2 resources.
Yeah, and they have been for years. It was just an improper procedure that was set up originally, but we learn as we go.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank
Mr. President,
Councilor Graney?
just a quick one, Chief Phoebus, with these new 6 cruisers that you're going to purchase in the next couple of years, I hope we're going to give our local firm down there on Main Street a shot at the bid, huh?
Oh, absolutely.
That would be great.
We reached out to them before this one. They just weren't ready yet with the state vendor licensing and everything. But yeah, Marcotte's been a great business. They're a great partner to us, a great community business. So we want to make sure we stay local, and they're always going to get the first crack at it. Now I think they're up and ready to go now. So, but we were so desperate
fantastic.
to get them
Great
up and running.
It's great to look at the local guys because they do a heck of a job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Bacon, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question? You're all set. Okay. Councilor McGivern and then Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple follow-ups. And Grumpy didn't come back because my better half brought me a cup of coffee when she heard I was grumpy.
Thank you.
Chief, just to point out, and I know on the off-duty stuff, the great pains have been taken to correct some of the problems there. One of the problems where sometimes vendors don't pay, and it kind of falls back where the city has picked up some of those deficits. One of those things that happened last year with the DLS was for off-duty police officers was $32,554 was taken out of our free cash. And that's the parts that, are upsetting, because that should have been, I don't know, I'm sure there's good reason, but I think we're going forward. So let's not go backwards on that one. I do have some questions on the reserves though. And I'm glad Councilor Sullivan asked a lot of questions, and once they're trained, they do everything a police officer does when you call them in, correct?
Yeah, well, there's the police academy part of it, and then there's the part of it where we train them through however many shifts it takes till our line supervisors are confident that they're ready to go out on their own. But yeah, absolutely. We train them, we send them to EVOC school to make sure that they're certified in driving cruisers, and we take all the precautions, and we make sure that they have the right disposition, a solid community focus, that they are adopting our philosophies here and how we do things in the city, 100%. And we walk them through it. Sometimes it takes some officers longer than others, and yeah, but they can absolutely do everything when they're ready. And we're careful.
Think it's a great way to break young men and women into the force, and I think it's worked like that for years. But we haven't corrected something in a long time. How much are we paying them per hour?
That I've actually tried to correct that myself last year. I think they're like $14 or $15 an hour. I put in a request, I believe, twice last year to bring them up to.
I don't even think that's even minimum wage.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. What is it? It's $14.99 an hour. I mean, okay. I put in a request to bring that up, I believe, as soon as I became chief.
Would anybody like to join me in filing an order tomorrow to increase the hour? Councilor Tallman, anybody else?
Yep.
Sure.
It is by ordinance, and I will ask that the city council will look into that and see if we can correct it to something that's fairer.
I'll co-sign that, Joe.
Especially, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Tallman, myself. Is Brennan near you, Councilor McGee?
No.
Could you file that for us?
I can file it for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, last one. And Councilor Tallman reminded me, just on the resource officers, I think we know that the schools pay for them. So isn't it supposed to be in their budget and not our budget?
In the school department's budget?
The school resources, they pay for it.
I'm not sure what
The
you're
way it used
asking.
to be done was, it would come out of
Yes.
their side of the budget. So why, this is the first time I've seen it on our side of the budget in a while. Tanya, are you with us? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. The police officers need to be appropriated in the city budget because they're union positions, and we need to appropriate for them. What the school is going to do is they're going to put it in with their indirect costs, so that way the city will be getting their money back. So it just offsets to a zero.
When do we
balance.
get that money?
We signed an agreement at the beginning of the year. And he puts his indirect costs in that. He has, the administrative costs are in there and the different things that he pays for within the city. So I'm going to have him put it in that agreement.
Are we getting it the same year that we pay it?
We're not giving them that money. It's going to be taken out of the money that we provide to the school on the city side. It's just cleaner.
It might be for you and the chief, but not the way we look at it.
What do you mean?
Well, it's an increase in our budget.
It's not an increase because it was taken out of the original line, right?
But it's
88 in one line and 2 in the other, so 90.
Well, I know, but it's. I mean,
There's no dollar increase.
The city, they have a budget with line items themselves, and they pay union people. They pay a lot of union people. So I don't see why it can't be in their budget. But 51-108 is the new code, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so last year, $138,329 was not in the city side of the budget. It was on the school side of the budget, correct?
No, it was in the city side. They just weren't labeled separately.
I'm looking at my last year's budget. We only paid for 88 officers.
Then it is 2 additional, sorry. I thought they were budgeted for 90 last year. I'm looking at
the ordinance is actually higher. The amount being budgeted is lower than the ordinance, and that gets confusing too, I realize. But I realize it's a wash that, as long as the schools pay for them. But it's very confusing when it's in the one side of the budget one year and the other side of the budget the next year.
The way that they were doing is they were actually giving revenue to the city, but it's all of the city's money to begin with, so it was just cleaner. And it actually was one of the things that the DLS had suggested that we do, just to keep it separate, so that it's more transparent that there are 2 resource officers within the city that support the school.
But the schools are using the money from Chapter 70 monies to pay for this. When you put it on this side of the budget, if you don't get reimbursed, the same year, we're using taxpayers, property taxpayers' dollars. It's all property, it's all taxpayers' dollars, but it's where it's coming from.
So we'll be getting all that money at the beginning of the year versus throughout the year. So I think it would actually be better.
Why is it on the recap sheet?
Within the city budget, yes.
The school budget, the school money is on the recap sheet. It's coming to the city side of the budget.
I don't think I understand your question. Sorry.
Oh, it was a curveball, Tanya. I'm not grumpy.
Well, I didn't catch it.
I'll call you tomorrow. It's more accounting than it is anything, but I'll call you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think.
Councillor Sullivan.
Hey, thanks. So one of my questions already got answered. Our reserves are making $15 an hour. Manny, do you know why the city hired an outside service to do security at the city hall for $8,500 instead of hiring a reserve or using the reserves?
No idea. I have no idea how that came about or no opinion on it, really, to be honest with you. No.
But so it was never requested of the police department, and
no, if it was requested, we would have provided it for sure.
And the reserves, they're for all intents and purposes, they're part-time, right? You could use the hours just like anybody else?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the union stance would be on that. It would probably have to be offered up to union positions first before reserves would be able to take that specifically. There's some union things that would have to be ironed out. I'm not sure if the union would even care, but we could certainly have had those discussions for sure.
Okay, so basically we more than likely could have used our reserves and had a city employee make it instead of going to an outside firm.
Possibly, sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, again, I would agree with Councilor McGivern on the school situation. I wish that was in their budget and not yours. And then, but I also would, I mean, if you have 88 and you're working on the streets, if you will, and you got 2 in the schools, and I'm assuming the schools contracted at some point to have 2 officers in the schools.
Yes.
Probably a while ago.
Yeah, it was under Chief Nieswanger. They we had SROs in there for a long time, and then Chief Nieswanger had requested that they start paying for it out of their budget because it was costing us, money having them there. So it made sense at the time, and they did the right thing. And
yeah, that makes sense to me too. But I mean, to me, then I would have I would give you the other 2, so that now those 2 officers, you still have your 90 working the streets, and you got 2 additional ones going into the schools that they're paying for. One other thing, I did say, and I saw the other day, I believe, a patrolman on a bike.
Yes.
And so, first of all, I was very happy to see that. It's just immediately, first of all, he had very good community relation type things. He's saying hi, he's looking to see how things are going. And then he went on down the road. But how many bike patrols do we have on a regular basis?
There is none on a regular basis. It fluctuates. I give these guys an option to either to foot patrol or bike patrol. Some of them have access to bike uniforms still. Some of them have access to the bikes. It's more of a preference. Some guys like to walk the beat, and some guys like to ride the bike. But we've been putting some patrols in the warmer weather out there. They're a little bit of a different approach because of COVID than what we normally do this time of year, coming into the warm weather. And our department, as far as good community relations and good community relations skills, they're fantastic. Very young department, very community focused. You don't see any of this craziness that you see around the country here. We're pretty strict. I don't tolerate any disrespect, and our guys are fantastic, and they do a fantastic job. While I'm talking, can I just throw out there that I like to personally thank these guys for, we go back in March. I want you to think about how everybody at home and how you guys felt in March when nobody knew what the death rate was. Nobody knew what was coming down the corner of this global pandemic. All we knew was what we saw. Everybody's across the world in spacesuits, and nobody knew what was going on. It was fearful for everybody.
Yeah, sure.
And these guys showed up every single day. They cleaned their cruisers. They washed their hands. I changed the policies around this building and directives almost daily. They must have thought I was crazy. It was just to keep our guys safe and healthy. And they were worried and concerned. This is anybody else are bringing it home to taking care of their parents, their grandparents, children. They showed up every single day, without complaint. And they did what they were told. They did what they had to do. They put themselves at risk and did a phenomenal job. And we were, because of that, largely unaffected by a global pandemic. So I want to say thank you publicly to the men and women of the police department that are down there every day, getting in these cruisers and doing a great job.
Thank you, John. And I will also commend them for what they've done, and have done a great job, and have done a good job keeping as much calm as we can in all the things going on. I would encourage you as much as possible to get the advantage to the bike patrol. To me, was both it can be personal, but it also gets you around a little quicker than a walking beat. I know walking beat has its point as well, but I know in that particular case, he came from one neighborhood. I saw him go through another neighborhood, and he was certainly going through and making sure, and probably in a half hour, he went through 2 neighborhoods and still took time to talk to people. I think if you can do more of that, I would strongly encourage you. And I thank you for what you are doing. And I'm done with my questions. So you look like you're in the traffic center.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions for the chief? Seeing no other hands up and no one waving, Chief, thank you very much for everything. We appreciate your time. if there's any updates you want to give us up until the 29th, we'd appreciate it. I know you're always contacting me and vice versa, so the communication has been phenomenal. So we thank you for everything, and to everyone who joined us tonight, thank you, Tanya, for always staying all the way here. Thank you very much, and to all the counselors. We had a full house. One person couldn't make it for a scheduling issue, so we will say full house tonight. Thank you to all the counselors. The
President, we still have a quorum. We actually should do Zoom more often for budget hearings.
Well, the next one's the 15th and then the 22nd. So just to keep that going, we'll keep the attendance up. And then once again, the 29th, and if need be, the 30th, if we have to keep going at all, that's just a safety day. But hopefully everything will be done on the 29th. With that, everyone have a great night. If you need anything from me, you know how to get a hold of me. I'm just going to turn off my phone.
Thanks,
for a
Chief.
week. No, just kidding.
Thank you.
Have a
Good
good
night.
everyone.
Thank you.
Well,
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.